Hello everyone, welcome to the Game Grotto tonight. I am here and Dawn is here for a little bit of game design discussion. Dawn is not moving, Dawn is just here. Say hi, Dawn.
Hi, Dawn.
Just because it's a little hard for him to be this close to my tablet and not, like, have his own camera and such. So we get Dawn like this tonight, so hopefully you guys don't mind. Just works better for our setup. Good to see you, Serenity and Random and Bree. Hope you guys are all having a good evening. Just make sure that I have everything so I can see everything here. Looks good. And we will get into our discussion of there we go. All right, we're good to go. So, Doc, where should we start?
Well,
all the important parts are working, I assure you, Bree.
So...
Oh, and as you guys can see, we have a little bit of a whiteboard here, so we can ask our questions, you know.
All right, well, I guess let's just start with the... We'll start with the why we're here, or why we're even doing this at all. People on the social media decided they were going to be saying something such as, Pokemon take notes. Whether it was a meme, that's why they said it, or they actually felt that way. Brought to the question,
and
what notes should they take? And from a little bit of browsing around and looking and... Hi, Serenity.
Hi, Serenity.
And,
So obviously,
clicking around.
It's sort of just like to preface it. A lot of people, whether you are of the group of people that agrees with this or not, a lot of people have said in the past that the last few Pokemon games have just been lackluster. Like, everybody remembers, you know, Scarlet and Violet. When it came out, it had some really bad frame rate issues.
Still does.
It still does. Sword and Shield, a lot of people criticized that, you know, they still use the same models from Pokemon Stadium. They, you know, like, things hadn't gotten up to snuff with what you would expect from a new Pokemon game. And then, even more so, people said things like, oh, Pokemon Legends Arceus, this is so nice. I hope that they bring this into the mainline games. And so we're kind of using today as a day to discuss what is it about Pokemon that we feel has been falling behind in the genre. What is it that, like, we like about Pokemon, and what things are things that, like, we think that Pokemon could be doing better, or why they haven't done it better. Or better,
well,
air quotes. So it's just something we've been thinking about a lot, and so instead of us just gabbing about it ourselves, we wanted to gab about it with you guys and share our ideas of what we've been thinking about from our professional perspective.
Well, there's the other side of it, which was the thought exercise. That's part of it. I guess really what it comes down to is I feel like everybody seems to keep talking about, like, I tried to look up fan games to see if they had corrected anything or done anything, and I feel like there's quite a few people who, if we look at what it is that Pokemon does, and what is Pokemon right now?
Yeah, that's a good thing to start with.
Pokemon, boiled down to its categories, it as a whole it's an RPG. Turn-based RPG.
Here, I'll do them over here. It's
sure.
Easier for me to... What is
Pokemon? Major components are turn-based RPG.
Okay. Give myself a little bit of more space here. Also, you guys let me know if the background music is a little too loud. I can turn it down a little bit. Because, you know, sometimes it's not quite perfect. But, okay, what is Pokemon? Well, for starters, it's turn-based RPG. Okay. Don, what else would be the defining features of what makes a Pokemon game a Pokemon game?
Creature collecting.
Creature.
Or a veritable party, you know, where you can...
Collecting? I mean, with it being based at Gachapon, oh, maybe I'll turn it up a little then, Brie. Yeah, just a tad, just a tad. Creature collection?
Yeah,
collecting?
The creature collecting also compounds with that's your party.
Your party.
So your party is customizable based on what you've captured. So it's that same kind of feeling from like Final Fantasy, the original one, where you could make your own team.
Yeah, you got your white mage, black mage.
And depending on what you chose at the beginning, but with Pokemon, it was veritable throughout the whole game. You could change.
Oh, doodling is totally gonna happen here.
Yeah, 4 monks, exactly. You could have all electric Pokemon or whatever. Like the point being that it was if you just took it.
Yeah, that's the aspect of the RPG aspect that's fun, right? Is like, you know, can you have 4 monks? Can you have like all these things?
Well, and like, can you add extra challenges like no potions and things like that? Like there were things that you could decide, but that's basically what Pokemon would be. Is it's a turn-based creature collecting with a veritable party and
what's another
type weakness resistance matchups. Elemental matchups.
Matchups. Yeah, actually, Brie mentioned that the other day, and I was like, that is very true. It's all about the elemental matchups. Oops. And don't worry, Dawn. There's a little corner of the screen where folks can still see the visuals of the stream on an ad break. They just can't hear us.
Okay, well, we should just take a moment.
Okay, I'm going to reorganize my notes a little bit. Give me a little more space. Okay. And for those of you who are curious, this is typically what Dawn and I do when we brainstorm like a game design. Is we get a whiteboard out and we kind of sketch our ideas out like this. So this is a very typical exercise for us when we're talking about like, you know, design and development and things like that. Let's see. Should I put like rock, paper, scissors?
No, because that's not what it is.
Because it's not supposed to be. So I guess that
well,
makes
no,
sense.
Okay, everyone's back now.
Okay, welcome back, everybody.
Continuing with the elemental matchup, it's different than rock, paper, scissors, where it's like, what was it? Fire Emblem is rock, paper, scissors. You know, spear beats sword, sword beats axe, axe beats spear, whatever.
Etc. Yeah.
It's a triangle that goes in a circle. They try to show that with the simple version, but Pokemon has more than just that.
Also, I feel like I need to have... Yeah, okay. All right. It's smart. It is thinking time. I need my glasses.
All right, any other important thing? With a turn-based RPG comes the overworld travel, comes the...
Turn-based RPG, it kind of encompasses, you know, a map.
Well, that means you're overworld until you have an encounter, whether it's random or you touch something. Right. And then the combat is turn-based.
Would random encounters be something worth mentioning?
No, because that's all part of... That's part of role-playing games.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
For the most part. I mean, there are a few that are... Everything is predetermined. But as far as video games as a genre, it's a pretty safe norm that it has some form of
What are some features about Pokemon that makes it feel like Pokemon and not like something else? Like,
I think it's the character designs.
I think it is. I think it is the design of it, which is really silly to say, but like the aesthetic. I think it might be a better word, right? Like a cute
to cool aesthetic. Like cool that's the
aesthetic. Artistic. Oh, I'm artistically
interesting.
The family friendly for the most part. Like,
yeah.
I think that's another thing that makes Pokemon
all ages
is that it is PG-13. Like,
no, that it's PG.
I think all of the Pokemon games are
All the main ones. We're specifically talking about like what is Pokemon as a mainline thing.
Yeah, I don't think. Are there any T-rated Pokemon games, or are they all E?
Arceus might be, just because of the
Might
subject
be?
matter, or
I can't think if there's actually a T-rated one at all.
probably not. It would only be because of the subject matter or something if they did. And
I bet a quick Google search would answer my question.
probably. But that's why I'm saying, as a whole, it's E10 in America.
Yeah, let's say E10. That's
Well,
a good
it
way
is.
to put it because, yeah, that's what Boss got rated. So that makes sense.
The point I'm saying is
because it
it's-
has battling in it, right?
Right. So it's fantasy combat. Yeah, it's on as a whole. Because remember, this is a what is Pokemon right now. When you think Pokemon, what does that boil down to into subcategories?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you know, main category, turn-based RPG.
I guess artistically, like, what I mean by that is that the designs of things are usually, like, E10 at the most. Like, let's think about ghost Pokemon for a second. Like, ghost Pokemon are obviously very dark, but they're not, like,
But that's story.
Cthulhu,
They
right?
don't act that way.
Yeah, that's a good
The
point.
Pokedex might have somebody say something like that, but that's also for the all ages thing. It's E for everyone, not E for kids.
Yeah,
There is a difference.
Yeah, there is a difference. Artistically, though, they keep everything not too gory, not E10, you know.
Yeah, that's the point.
it. That was basically the point I was trying to make.
As a whole, even if there is a
Yeah.
random Pokemon game that is T for teen,
I
or
wonder, is there anything outside of the fact that it's a turn-based RPG? Is there anything that really sticks out as elements of a Pokemon game that would need to be 100%? Like, without this, it wouldn't be Pokemon.
no, that's pretty much it. Like those are the main. Anything else is shared between other games.
Okay.
I mean, even at this point, Pokemon
let's
is
get a little more specific.
all right.
Because we're talking about mainline game,
Yeah.
in opposed to.
Oh, I guess there's the fact that they're always split.
They go. Oh, there's two versions.
There's two versions.
There are two versions.
They were one of the first, if not the first, game to do that.
That is very
To
true.
promote their trading. You can trade party members between red, blue, etc.
with specific Pokemon. Yeah. Buy a link cable.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
It was one of the first games where it was like there was a red and blue, or an X and Y, or A and B, so to speak. Or really, it was
Okay, this
green
gray
and
is
blue,
killing me.
but
I gotta
still.
like make it a purple or something.
purple.
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 Okay, there.
Ew, now I can't read it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd like to watch that out a little bit.
Now it's back.
There we go.
Uh-huh.
A little more purplish gray.
Whatever.
Um,
That's some rage.
actually, Serenity, that's a very good point. That's what I was thinking, going on a journey. You're old enough to get your first Pokemon, now go on a journey, coming of age journey. I think that the entire, like, the structure of every single Pokemon game is you fight gym leaders. You go on some kind of competition journey.
Well, see, that's the interesting thing about it. Because that's not the case in every Pokemon game.
Yeah.
It always boils
is
down
it-
to
but
eventually
is it-
getting
oh,
badges
one
or
sec,
something.
I'm gonna rub my eye. Hopefully my camera doesn't get out.
But
Six party members. That actually, you know, you're not wrong, Silver Dragon. That is a very specific number of Pokemon that, like, through the entire series, if you had more than 6 Pokemon, would it not feel like a Pokemon game in your party? That's actually, I think that's worth putting on here.
okay.
I think that also you go on a journey. Go on, oops,
Well, it'd be more specific of coming of age journey.
a coming of age. I'll put quotes there.
But see, the thing is
Journey.
I know that's pretty much been in every Pokemon game, but I don't know if that's
But,
needed.
right, well, right now I think we're trying to figure out
Okay.
what things make it feel like Pokemon, specifically compared to, like, a different RPG.
Okay. Hard limit of 6.
Yep, hard limit 6 party
Comp.
members.
Now, that doesn't mean you have a total of only 6 possible. You have many more than that possible, but
obviously,
that you can only pick a team
stuff.
of 6, and you have to swap them around.
Just a bit of the question mark Pika there. Okay. I can start another row here if we think of more. Or do you think that's a good place to, like...
I don't think... I think any deeper, and at that point, you're just, like, naming off... There's fire. There's water. It's like, okay, now we've gotten too deep.
Elemental matchups. Yeah, then we've got that. We've got that. So... if there was a game...
But no, okay, based on this, here's what I see is a absolute must-have.
Okay.
Creature collecting in your party. So write this on the other side, or just draw a line.
What is Pokemon, and then... Oh,
well, that is what Pokemon is.
okay.
But for me, trying to think of, like... Actually, let's just go down the list then. It'll be easier to help explain the thought process behind this.
Okay.
Turn-based RPG. At the time when it came out, and for a while, that was perfectly fine. Now, Pokemon is one of the few that still is pure turn-based of you put in all your commands, and they go. A lot of games that are like that have changed from turn-based to some semblance of action.
Final Fantasy, for instance, they've taken the approach of action RPG, which as, like... if you think about it, Final Fantasy made that change very early.
Final Fantasy 4.
Right, exactly.
3
It's
or
still
4.
on Super Nintendo at that point?
Super Nintendo would have been 4.
Right. So,
And that was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
The change that Final Fantasy took right off the bat, it was very quick that they started to evolve their combat system. Whereas Pokemon, I feel like the only thing they've really done to evolve their combat system is...
seasons.
They add double battles.
Well, no, the equivalent of seasons where it's like, yeah, a gimmick. Or now this season of Pokemon, we've added another type, like Fairy, with this... or we've taken away Gengar's Levitate ability, or we've done X or Y thing. It's like a patch note rather than a new game. It still is... roughly the exact same game, which I'm trying to voice the opinion that I've seen people say it's like Pokemon's just the same game again.
Right.
Granted, that doesn't always, it's not always a bad thing, but...
is it a defining feature of what makes it Pokemon, or is it a stale thing that people keep just sort of like repeating because of laziness? Like,
I think...
which is the case?
The point here is that with Pokemon and this whole turn-based thing, I feel like this was the first thing to tackle because when I was a young child and Pokemon was newer, I was playing it with my imagination saying, I can't wait until this gets good enough that it plays like the anime. And it never does. And it never did. And it still hasn't. And now it's been like 20-something years. It's kind of disappointing. Now, not like there hasn't been games that kind of satisfy that, like Pokken Tournament. But the problem with Pokken is that it's a fighting game. Fighting games are already not always approachable by everyone, no matter what they did with Pokken.
Well, for me, like, I tried to play Pokken, but it was just too difficult for me, right? Because the turn-based RPG is what is appealing. And even like we talked to Jocelyn last night, or to be Faith, she was saying that, like, it's one of those things where the nostalgia of the turn-based is what brings her back to it, right?
So, before we go any farther with this little discussion of whatever bullets you've added that I don't know why you did so far.
Just like a gimmick to change combat and new types.
No, don't need that.
Those were more my thought process.
Before we write anything else down, the premise of this, and maybe write this down, the premise should be, and this was where I found this to be an interesting thought experiment, which is what this whole thing is. How do you make changes to Pokemon without
making it not
Hi, how are you?
No. Well, not that too, but no, without alienating, or how do you keep the most of the current fans that you already have around and want to keep playing it while still making improvements that you could say, or that the majority of people would say, I see how they've evolved it, or I can see...
Oh, hi, Rooster. Good to see you. Hello.
Where,
okay,
you can see the natural progression. So basically...
what's our next note then here?
How to improve Pokemon, but keep as many of the original fans as possible. Because there are people who say, oh, I don't like Pokemon because it hasn't changed, or because they don't like turn-based anymore, or they don't like this aspect or that aspect, or they want it to play differently, right? But that they've left already. How could you do something to bring those people who have of that opinion back and still keep it close enough that the people who like it the way that it is don't feel like that's just got thrown out the window and this is just a gimmick?
Right.
Because if it's just another gimmick, it'll get thrown out the window like Pokken was, and never to be seen and done again.
Oh, hi, Miko.
Hello.
You came just in time. We're just getting into our basically the whole entire
now
theme of this particular game design discussion.
Before getting too much farther, the when I first sat down and tried to think about this like about a week and a half to 2 weeks ago.
Before we get too much farther, I was curious, chat. So when Dawn had mentioned, like, when you were a kid and you watched the Pokemon game, or you watched the anime or the show
at any point,
and then you went and played the game, I feel like for me, I never really had that feeling like you have, where you're just like, oh, I want to play a game that looks like the show. But then, like, I think you're right. Like, I used to just pretend the Pokemon were.
Oh yeah, my imagination would just fill in the gaps of what was happening. In the same way, like, I could even say Earthbound, the way that it writes out the description, almost like a D&D thing, where it's like, oh, I can. The weird hippie dude did all these things. None of that actually happened, but the description was written out.
Nowadays, we have the technology to show all of that, and yet the Pokemon just go like, rah.
Technically, if you really look at it, the Pokemon are still doing what they did in Final Fantasy 1.
Yeah, they
take a step forward,
and
they do the attack, and then the camera cuts away and shows the reaction. That doesn't even do what Final Fantasy 6 would do,
now,
where the characters actually had to move to their target.
The question I want to ask the chat is that, does it seem like the natural progression of things to make it look more realistic would be to make it like the show? Or does it seem more like you should take the RPG element and try to improve it as an RPG? Because your thought was to make it like the show, because it's like, obviously, you know, you're paying homage to the other source material.
Well, like, the way this was what caused this being a good exercise was, for me, if I was to make it for me specifically, I would want to make it where it was. I'll just stick for this exercise because that's what I was doing. Like, let's go back to simple. Just back to red and blue and yellow and green. Kanto 151. Like, let's just start there. If I were to be remaking that, I would make it more like a Tales of game or an action RPG where you throw the Pokemon out and then it would play like Pokken or like Tales of, where I have all of their attacks slotted and it's an action RPG and I would have direct control. But I'd be happy, but then I thought, that's not Pokemon. That'd be a reskin of a Tales of game.
Right. That would be like...
the thing that caused it to be a fun exercise was like, okay, well, what if I tried to do this? And it's like, immediately really quickly fell into, well, if you did all these things that you're trying to do to make it still feel like Pokemon, then you didn't change anything.
Right.
Or you might as well not have changed anything. But everybody kept saying on the internet at the time, so like a week and a half ago, everyone on social medias were saying stuff like, oh, Pokemon needs to take notes, Pokemon needs to do this, Nintendo needs to do that. And it's like, when thinking about it critically, it was like, but what notes really? Especially because most people were pointing to Palworld, and this is about the only thing I'm going to mention about it. Okay, they're pointing to Palworld. Pokemon take notes. Went and go looked at it. Three different ways.
Yeah.
There was nothing to take notes on. It's not even the same game.
Right.
What are they talking about?
It's like, if you look at the game and compare it to Pokemon, really the only thing that is extremely similar, obviously,
the designs of the
creatures of the Pokemon. Yeah, exactly, Serenity. I feel like was a lot of it was the memeing, and I mean, we've said that before. It really did seem like it was caught up in the meme of people just being like, guns make it funny, haha, sexy Pokemon, I want to do things too.
The thing that makes
it's not really honest in saying that, right?
And then the big thing, the biggest thing that shows that game really has no love into it, and it's just, we took mechanics just because that's in that mechanic. If it's a survival game, like, which is what it really is.
And we've established that Pokemon is a turn-based game, right? Oh, Don,
I'm reading the briefing. Yeah, in 2D, any Pokemon could use any move because I'll just read it out loud. The strength of Pokemon had in 2D that didn't translate well to 3D was universal animations. In 2D, any Pokemon could use any move because the animations for the moves were generic, but when translated to 3D, it made the models seem too flat. Okay, so we'll get back to that.
Oh, yes. Actually, I'm gonna pin this.
That's a good part of the discussion.
We just add it to our little bulletin board here.
Just take a quick snap. Just
that's
snip
what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna snip it real quick.
Just so we come back to it. Don't want to forget it.
Come back to this.
Well, it's just a snipping so people can keep talking and we don't forget it. Okay.
All right, I got.
To finish what I was talking about with to finish up the little bit of Palworld that kind of brought this on as a good discussion and a thought process or of thought exercise was the way that they handled it was, okay, they made a builder's game and then basically tried to put modern Pokemon. Realistically, they took Breath of the Wild, then they tried to basically make it a builder game, which was Craftopia, which then really then they finished Tears of the Kingdom, which basically is what Craftopia is. So then, I'm gonna get to what Serenity's talking about too. Get to the fact that it was a builder game with just some with essentially knockoff Pokemon, Fakemon, right, whatever you want to call them. And they slapped in mechanics. If it's a builder game, all the other builder games I've ever played where you had any kind of pet or creature, it's like the wolves from Minecraft even, or the wolves from Valheim, or the dinosaurs in Ark. I'm not sure about Ark, so I'll stick with the two I do know, Minecraft and Valheim. Especially Valheim. In Valheim, when I found out that you could tame the wolves, and if you had enough wolves, they would make puppies and they would grow. We had a cave that was near an icy area that was difficult. I personally was hunting for meat and breeding the wolves to take on parties with me to go hunting and find things. So people could keep building or doing whatever they want to do, and I could go do my solo thing that I like to do in builder games. And I'd leave wolves out front, and they would just start an ecosystem out front of the house. The key here is, in all the survival games that I've played, if something you've tamed dies, it's dead.
Right. That's inherently a survival game element.
Well, that's what makes
not an RPG element.
That's what makes it a survival game, is that when something...
Also, hi, Corky. Good to see you.
When something dies, there's a penalty to it.
Hold on.
What happened?
My glasses.
Oh.
Hi, Corky.
The point I'm making is, in Palworld, from what I've seen, if you catch one in a ball and then it dies, you can go to some random computer that you built out of a few iron or something, and it just resurrects them. If they really wanted to make something their own, and not just copy-paste because Pokemon did it, that should have gone right out the window.
Right.
They die. Better pick up what's left of them.
Typical of a survival game.
But see, they didn't know what they were making. They were just grabbing mechanics. And the way you can usually tell someone's not doing anything, even if it is inspired by or almost ripped off of something, the quickest way to determine that it's not a ripoff is if you make a logical choice. The quickest way you can determine something is a ripoff is when there's something simple that's like, okay, this is how it happens here. Here's how it happens here. Why did that rule not carry over here? Oh, because Pokemon did it that way. Well, that doesn't make any sense for this.
In the context of this game,
it makes no sense.
Actually make any sense of that? It's like, no.
And they just did it just because. And so that's just one example. I don't want to keep going on about it because it's kind of gross what it is. And if people had fun with it, that's great. You probably enjoyed builder games.
Yeah, exactly.
The game itself isn't necessarily the problem. It was the reaction of people who were saying the stuff, which then brought on this whole thought exercise of, let's talk about that. Let's really think about it instead of just saying it out loud or just saying it on a social media post to try to get some clout,
like
just
viral thing. But what I agree with what you said, Serenity, about like basically people just tend to make things edgy. That's it. Like, and to be fair, I like creepypastas. Like, I think that they're fun. I think like Sonic EXE is like, I enjoy that aspect of it. But at the same time, you can't make an actual game about it.
Right, because we really need Blue's Clues to have GTA mechanics to it and not be a kid's game anymore.
it's one of those things where the whole entire point we're making is Pokemon take notes, right? Nintendo and Pokemon and Game Freak are not going to make a mature title of Pokemon because of this one right here. This one right here. And this one right here, right? It's like one of those things where you have to be joking. But then people weren't joking because they kept saying it.
Some were, to be fair.
Some were.
I really hope there were some that were just joking.
Yes.
And I'm sure there were. But that's that point. So that kind of what brought up the whole thought thinking of this. And it was...
Because the other thing, too, is I don't think anybody would have said Pokemon take notes if they were not unhappy with what Pokemon was doing. Right? That discussion never would... Palworld would have just come and gone as another just, like, funny joke.
Another builder game.
Another builder game, another meme game. There's nothing wrong with doing that. The problem is that they were trying to tell Pokemon that what they were doing was lesser, and they were using it in protest. And that's not really... But they wouldn't feel the need to do that if Pokemon was doing things differently. So we're asking ourselves... What exactly could be different? Would be
without
different,
it not
without
being
it
Pokemon?
Not being Pokemon anymore. But yes.
Yeah, and people exactly. They would have been like, yeah.
We watched Oni play Palworld. They did one episode, and Zach Hadel, the writer for Smiling Friends,
co-creator of Smiling Friends, put it really eloquently.
Which we are very big fans of. Said
he put it pretty well. Here, can I quote
go
it?
ahead, Don.
He quoted it. And this video is only like a few days old, so he quoted it saying, Nintendo is stupid and these guys are hacks. These guys being Pocket Pair. And it's like...
he's like, I mean, that's the general consensus. Like, nobody disagrees with this. Like, the way he said it is like, I'm not the only one who thinks this, right?
Nintendo is being stupid and these guys are hacks.
And that was kind of... We laughed at it because like, you know, if that's all that it was, I don't think it would have bugged us so much.
But here's the big kicker. When I put myself in the shoes of... If I was working for Game Freak, which already that was another little debacle of everyone's like saying Nintendo do this, Nintendo do that. Nintendo's just the publisher. Game Freak's the designer. Anyway, not everyone apparently knew that. I don't know. I'm sure everyone in our chat does, but I always thought that was weird when they'd say that. I'm sure it was just shorthand, whatever, yada, 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 benefit of the doubt. Fine. Moving on. If I was a designer presented with the task of present a solution for upgrading Pokemon, and I sat for a few hours just trying to think it through, and part of that design was like going, okay, so if I wanted to make it, and I did what I was talked about first, which was, I'd want to make it some completely different thing, and I went, that's not Pokemon.
Right.
How could I take what then I just said and turn it into Pokemon? It's like, what if I slowed it down and made it I could move things around, or I could do this, and then how would I incorporate that? And then if I was trying to incorporate the people liked it to be a little slower and have turn-based, well then now it's not action-based, so then it's not what I wanted. But if I did this weird hybrid at the way I was currently talking, where it's like, you kind of move them around, or it's like Baldur's Gate 3. It's like, I can move them around on a small grid, like Baldur's Gate 3, or like the South Park Ubisoft game, The Fractured But Whole, where it was like a small grid of like 12 spaces and then you did attacks, and it's like, but then at that point you could just simplify it for kids, which would then go back to less squares, and now you've only got 4 squares, and now you're back to double battles, and nothing changed. And that's what brought about the thought going, this is actually a pretty difficult thought exercise to redesign, because even if you try to go really far away and then walk yourself back to what I believed most people who do like Pokemon, or the things I liked about Pokemon, and simplified the designs I was thinking of, it brought me back to the turn-based game as it is. So then suddenly, for me, it was having the realization of, I see why they've been slow to make changes. It isn't just a make it better quotes. There isn't just a done, it's better now. Because sure, if you make the graphics cleaner, you made the performance better, which granted the performance should have been better anyway.
I mean, I gotta keep you guys entertained a little bit, right? With my oh, yeah, Among Us, Pokemon Trainer Among Us.
But
okay, I'll keep going. I am gonna make Ash Among Us though now.
If from that point of view or from that design, going, this is difficult. I'm gonna keep thinking about it, and that was the exercise to keep going with. So, with that in mind, I started coming to some of these conclusions. Based with the premise that people like the pacing of Pokemon being that they're not feeling overwhelmed.
I guess, Dawn, if you
decisions.
don't mind me
Sure,
just
go for
segueing real quick to the chat.
Actually, before we go too much farther,
Oh, but
the
did you want to
Serenities.
look at...
Yes, let's go back to that topic.
We talked about Serenities a little bit.
No, we didn't. We talked about Serenities, not Breeze.
Yes,
Excuse me.
You are correct. Okay, so this is what Bree said. We grabbed it so we could talk about it. Go ahead.
So this was the strength of 2D was that the moves didn't translate well to 3D because of the universal animations.
There we go.
Talking about that, there is quite a few ways that they could have taken care of that. I think because of how they moved into it, it felt...
Well, here's the thing, right?
I mean,
in the beginning, the 3D Pokemon games were literally just the 2D Pokemon games with 3D
actually,
models.
no, the original 3D ones were just Pokemon Stadium, where all you did was do battles.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
So,
and Pokemon Snap, they didn't even bother with the mainline games going 3D for a very long time.
the first 3D mainline game, I believe, was Pokemon Coliseum. That was actually like a Pokemon game where you walked around areas, you had encounters, except...
So that's actually a really good point to make, because that means that the very first one, they didn't try to dedicate 3D to their mainline games. That just goes to show how apprehensive they are about like changing the mainline games. You know what I mean? Because they did 3D, they like did it for the
longest time. Spin-offs were the only things
that
were
was the
spin-offs.
only thing that ever got the 3D treatment, until obviously now they're all 3D. I'm just gonna color these guys.
But I think with the attacks, I feel like it's coming down to a problem with... Now, I'm sure anyone who's watched long enough has heard me say this before, but animes that have character overloads. Pokemon is a game that currently has a character overload to the point where people are upset, and myself included in some of the points where, oh, a new Pokemon game comes out, your Pokemon that you liked isn't going to be in it.
Yeah.
Or not all the Pokemon are in it, and it's like, ah. And for some people, it's like, whatever happened to the tagline, gotta catch them all?
Their gacha has wait.
Which gacha?
I'm kind of confused. I mean, they are gachapon because that's what they're based off of. But
well, that's what they were going to be originally.
Yeah.
But
I think that's what Knight is referring to. Also, good to see you, Knight. Pokemon Masters EX. Wait, did Pokemon do a gacha game besides?
Oh no, I meant the...
Oh yeah, the actual characters, as in models they have to model and rig.
Yeah.
In this context, yeah.
I had forgotten about
I didn't know about that one.
I was protesting that one in my own way, not playing it because they got rid of the one I did like, which was the Pokemon Duel, which is the one that had the spinners.
Oh yeah, the spinners one.
That's what
I do remember that.
I believe the Pokemon Masters EX was essentially the newer phone game that came out after that one was being shut down, and I was like, oh, but I like that one. I didn't play it very often, but it was fun to play. Anyway, that was a board game that got translated to digital, and then the EX was the one where it was like, I believe they do it like trainer Pokemon pairings. I didn't realize it was gacha, but I mean, it's on the phone, so
Makes
of course
sense.
it is.
It's on the phone, right? I think it's here.
That Beyblades, they were basically like stat spinner, where you would spin them and it would point
More
to
like a Hero Clicks, if you've ever heard of those, Miko.
Sort of. It was sync pairs. Yeah, that's okay. That's what they ended up calling it. All I ever saw were a few ads for it and went, I want Duel back, and it's not coming back, so I'm not gonna play this one. I still have it installed on my phone just so I can see the icon, even though it's like, if you boot it up, it just says, oh, this was closed down in like 2019 or something. I'm like, oh. So
sad robot is sad.
But that's fine. I didn't spend any money on it, so I just had fun playing the game.
Yeah, you can't complain when they shut it down if you didn't spend any money on it.
Fair enough. I feel bad for the people who did spend money on it. Like, they spent a lot. But anyhow. But anywho.
Oh, nice. Big head pats for you.
Way off on topic.
Anywho, yeah.
The point being is that they've gotten to that part where if they try to make a new game, they can't make it quickly because realistically, to make people happy with the whole tagline being gotta catch them all, you gotta have access to them all.
Yeah.
And I feel like since they started getting rid of mechanics and then replacing them and making them feel more like gimmicks rather than additions, because I would say up safely, I believe I can say up to minimum Emerald, so the 3rd gen, possibly even 4th gen. Oh, the ears are more Glaceon, but yeah.
They are. I'm drawing these from memory, so I'm I might get some details off.
I would say at minimum up to about 4th gen, 3rd or 4th gen, all they were really doing were adding mechanics. So it was like, the first one was, here's the game, like, period. The second one having new types, another 100 Pokemon, and they just added Johto. And you could even go back and play Kanto again. It was like probably one of the most perfect sequels to an RPG, where it was like, I hope you like the original game because you're going to go back to that area now and do that all over again if you'd like. But sort of sped up. Go get all the badges.
Oh yeah, we were going to talk about that a little bit, Knight, about the fan games. I think that once we get to this next set of points, it'll the fan games will come into the conversation.
So,
you did you have anything else to say about Bree's comment, which we were very much enjoying talking about?
That was kind of the point, was the fact that they had so many that they'd have to incorporate, that I think the quality started to fall a bit to the wayside due to the just sheer amount of work it would take to do it well. And then, of course, they're still trying to add more Pokemon instead of... it's more like...
Yeah, I want to ask Chad a question.
Okay.
If a new Pokemon game came out and they didn't add any new Pokemon, would you be disappointed, or would you just be like, fair enough, give me all the ones I want? Like, because for me personally, I feel like if they added, like, alternate versions, like they did with the, like, Alola versions, right?
No.
Like, I don't know...
No, it should...
I don't know. I would be disappointed if there were none.
Well,
but
here's the point.
At the same time, like, I don't know, like...
New story, new land, all the Pokemon.
Exactly. I think the reason
just
that
the fact
if
it had all the Pokemon.
The reason I crave the new Pokemon is because I want something new to pursue. But if the game itself was fun, then I wouldn't care. Right?
I don't think new Pokemon is what makes the game good.
Well, no, I think that it makes it fun, though, because you're, like, looking for the new thing. It's still an integral part of them making new ones, but if it's making it so they can't, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, and I disagree.
Okay, so you're kind of in the same mind as Miko. You'd say, I'm happy I got what I wanted.
Here's a better way to put it, at least how I see it.
I'm curious, that's why I asked.
If you're on a boat and there's a hole in it because you didn't finish building the boat and you're already out and you're like, ship it onto the sea, ship it out. But you know what? You painted the mast a new color. The ship is sinking. The building is falling down. The foundation is missing. But you know what? It looks so pretty.
It's so pretty.
When you're missing half the game, but it looks prettier. No, that doesn't fit.
Okay.
It's just you get problems like what they have now. Yeah.
Would you rather die on a pretty boat or an ugly boat? I would rather die on a pretty boat.
I would rather sail safely to my destination in an ugly vehicle or an ugly boat than die because it exploded, but it looked pretty doing it.
Okay, valid. Absolutely.
That's my thinking of it. So it's more like maybe finish building it before you start painting it, or try to add something. It's more like, all right, now the building is this tall, let's go taller. Sir, the foundation can't take it. If we add 600 more tons, it's gonna collapse. It'll be fine.
It's fine. He did it. It's our fault the game is bad. Isn't that what we want? We just want to blame somebody and be like, all right, now that he's gone, can we have good games? But yeah.
The point being, with all of this, I feel like when they did the switch to 3D, make sure it tastes like sugar. When they did the shift to 3D, I think they lost their base.
Jigglypuff looked weird.
Because if you think about it with the sprites, it was like, oh, we'll just make the sprites better. We'll add more colors. We'll add more of this. But the gameplay was still essentially the same. They had sort of an engine that they could essentially reuse and build off of.
Churn out games.
But once they switched to 3D, that was like, oh, well, we've got to make these new Pokemon in 3D, but oh, we've got these models from the Nintendo 64 lying around. Let's just use those. We don't have to remake them. And it's like, yes, you do. You need to upscale them. You need to fix them. And they're like, and so like, there's still some models that I like, probably Electrode or something like that, or Voltorb, where it's like, they're still just Nintendo 64 models, or maybe a little more polygons, but they're still...
And then you look at the Pokémon models and you're just like,
yeah.
Oh, baby. Like,
well, some of them. Some people don't like some of their weird details, but that's the point.
Like giving them scales and stuff.
That's to each their own sort of thing, but some people didn't like it. That's all I see. I'm just voicing that little... I've heard a few people say that on random YouTube videos and social media things, but that's a minority as far as I could tell. Like, literally maybe 3 people I saw make a video about that, and not a lot of people were like, it wasn't that big a deal. So, as far as Pokken is concerned.
Okay. So, I finished coloring all my things, so...
To segue, I guess, to the next step of the design of this, I went to work designing a possible presentation if I were to present it, or if I was in that situation of
if we took the like if we say
if I had to if I was
Scarlet and Violet just came out, and this is what, if we wanted a game that was the ultimate Pokemon game that had all the things we wanted in it, what would it have?
And make and improve it.
And how would that improve it? That's what our next section is going to be.
So, for me, I looked at essentially the industry of what other companies that have made games or are considered large contributors to this genre at the same time did. And the one I focused on quite a bit was Square. So Square Enix, Squaresoft, Square, etc. Because around the same time, they were making similar games. They were both making semi-turn-based RPGs.
Right.
You walk around, you change your party members. So I'm talking like Final Fantasy.
Fair, Final Fantasy games and Pokemon games are similar by the fact that they're
RPGs.
They're RPGs, but like
That's
in general, there's really no similarity.
No, just the genre. The genre of a turn-based RPG or just an RPG in general. Okay, cool.
Yes, please finish up at work night.
So with that, I set out to looking at that, and one of the first things that popped out was for Final Fantasy. So Square Enix handling one of their flagships of Final Fantasy, they went from true turn-based, which was, if I remember correctly, Final Fantasy 1 through 3 for sure, or at least 1 for sure, where it was you pick your actions and commands for each party member, and then based on speed and other stats, which attacks went off back and forth between the enemies and the player characters or the party. That's what Pokemon is even still today.
Yes.
Then for Square, as they continued to try to push RPGs, they then went to the action turn-based with the meter filling up, and when the meter hit full, you could then it'd pop up the windows, you could select what you wanted them to do depending on which party member it was who was ready. That was Final Fantasy 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. All of those had a version of that. Then I thought about, and so then 10 came out, and they kind of went back to Final Fantasy 1, but it was more like a pseudo turn-based, so more like what Arceus was, but with more party members than just you and the enemy. After that came 11, which was the MMO, where it was pseudo action based, because you would engage a target and then auto attack, and there was a level of the fight is happening regardless of me giving commands to a degree. If you were doing auto attacks, it would auto attack, but you had to give commands in real time. And then from 11 came 12, where they tried to do the gambit system. And that was, the bar would fill up sort of, but they would just do whatever you told them, or in the case of the gambit, whatever you programmed them to do. Interesting, but not the greatest thing. 13 was more of the same in that regards, where they kind of were evolving into an action RPG, up until 14, where it's literally, for the most part, dodge the area of attacks, and you're constantly doing rotations and attacks and combos and needing to target. Everything's like real time.
Right.
You've got, with the only thing being a cooldown. That's, for most attacks, are only like 3 seconds long. So now you're thinking, okay, now the RPG has turned into a 3-second wait time to do your next command. And then, of course, they went to 15 and 16 and 7R. And that was the one that really got me thinking. In 7R, that's a remake of 7, which was the first step away from true turn-based RPG. Right. And how did they handle it? Well, you can move around, you have combos you can do, and then, but to keep the feel from the old game, they still has a little bar that fills up that then you could then open a menu or do a command. And then, of course, with 16, it's just action RPG,
so I guess,
full action RPG.
The basically the place that your brain went was that.
Well, with that all laid out, that took a while to talk about. It was easier to think about. Right. I had to say it all out loud. But with taking all of that into account, while Pokemon has really never moved anything gameplay-wise, no advancements in gameplay, not really. Not when you boil it down to, like, its essence. Pokemon has not changed. Very few people, I would say, and I'm not saying none, but I would say few people like that it hasn't changed.
I think
it's been too long, because if you think about it, the entire 20-something years that Final Fantasy has been trying things, to ups and downs, likes and dislikes, but they've been trying to push it, Pokemon has never budged. Maybe a few spin-offs here or there, but in its essence, it's not moving. It's not changing. Now, like I said, I would say there's a sizable amount of people who like it. I would say there's a larger amount of people who are indifferent to it, like, it's Pokemon. I would probably put myself in that category of, well, it's Pokemon. I haven't really thought about it that hard until now. So, it is what it is. I play it, I have fun with it, I get the enjoyment I want out of it, and then try to move on. And then I think there's quite a few people, like, as many people who like it as a turn-based that dislike that it's still turn-based.
Or people, I believe Serenity mentioned a while ago, that wouldn't even touch Pokemon because it is purely turn-based.
Yes.
Which is a very archaic, design for a game nowadays. Not saying that people don't do it. I mean, lots of indies make, turn-based RPG Maker games.
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things...
And as someone who sees lots of those games on there, I immediately look past them because...
Yeah, it's just one of those genres that there isn't a lot of appeal, because the reason they did that back then
limitations.
Was because of limitations. And that's why I understand why indies do it, because it's like they're just using a tool because they're trying to make a game and they don't have the skill set, or they're, it's their first game and they're trying something. I mean, I made games in RPG Toolkit.
I did that. That was what I was about to say. Yeah. I did too. I didn't try to sell them.
That's a whole different conversation, but seriously.
Now, that like, does, so that's what led me into the segue of looking at fan games.
Yes, that's what I was getting.
I pulled up and looked at, like, I wanted a quick summary, so I found a few YouTube videos. So I'm prefacing this with, I did not die, prefacing that with, whatever, prefacing, prefacing.
I'm the one who says that weird.
Yeah, anywho.
Go ahead.
I am putting this out there before going too much deeper that this is based off of ultimately a cursory glance. This isn't looking for, like, help to find the best ones, or, like, if you have one you like or whatever, that's fine. I am talking about the design and boiling things down into their essence. And from all of the Pokemon fan games that I was seeing people talking up, for the most part, it is still Pokemon.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is they didn't touch the thing that is important or should be evolving. They left that completely alone.
Which,
and what I mean by that is,
as we've described, is
it's still turn-based.
It's turn-based, yeah.
It's essentially still the exact same game. They just did something like, now you're a gym leader. Now you can fuse them. But the combat is still, I have 4 attacks. They have elements. They have weaknesses. It's still just the Pokemon fighting game. Oh, the story has this, or the Pokemon, it includes Shadow Pokemon, or the story does that. I don't really think Pokemon needs a different type of story.
They're pretty okay with doing their own stories. Like,
well,
I don't think. And since we are using Palworld as the whole reason the Take
story?
Notes got even started, it's like that's not
a
even a better like, oh, Palworld's got such a great story. It's like, no, it doesn't.
But
like, that's not even the comparison.
I'm not saying that those fan games weren't cool with what they were trying to do with the story change, but what I'm getting at is the core concept in those fan games are still turn-based.
Right.
So it's not like they would capture what I was looking for as an improvement to the RPG genre. They're still falling back on what Pokemon is as a whole as far as its RPG genre.
Right, and you are absolutely correct, Bree. Any
yeah, like Yokai Watch, like
sure, Digimon even.
Some of the Digimon goes all over the place.
Different things, and I think that's one of the reasons why Digimon constantly is like, you know, they're always changing and trying things, and nothing has really stuck as like, this is the way to make a new, like, monster taming kind of game. Like, nothing has really evolved, and I think one of the reasons it hasn't evolved is because Pokemon still has the monopoly on what is that genre
for the most part.
Well, and that's why people are like, skeptical.
While you say that, let's take that for a moment. So, well, I was just trying to address the fan game. So to finish that thought,
I agree, Serenity. I've always really liked that.
I think what the fan games were trying to do as far as the story stuff or different settings or essentially all the things they were doing, realistically speaking, would boil down to a cool side quest or a cool optional main side quest. I know that sounds weird to say, but what I mean by that is like the being a gym leader would be a really good end game.
Yeah, in any other RPG,
you could just add that as a DLC end game.
Have as a DLC,
right?
A side quest, a multiple choice, like
stop.
You know,
that's
that kind of stuff.
That's what I mean when I'm saying a main side quest, where it wasn't part of the main story of Pokemon. It's kind of like that. Who was the actor now?
Okay, everything should be easier to read. Oops. As I color over it.
The point being, I'm just going to stick to the one that was the most interesting to me that I've had a thought of, which was title defenses. Exactly, Bree. Like, to sum that all up, I'm focusing on that one because that would be a really cool end game side quest thing where it's like people come and challenge you and they get harder, easier, maybe a fame thing. But the point being, that entire fan game where it's like, this gym of mine, I think is what the fan one is called. So I'll because I like to focus on one. Let's focus in on one fan game. We'll focus on that one because I personally found that one interesting. Oh
yes, it's Serenity. Like, seriously though.
But all that aside, if I focus on that one, it's still Pokemon.
Oops.
It's still a turn-based game.
Don, can you get my pen? Because if I bend over, my camera will hate it.
No, where did it go? There it is.
It rolled. Thank you.
Boiling that down, focusing on that one in particular, that would have been a cool thing to do, where you have that after you're done. Maybe you choose to be a gym leader. Maybe you choose to join Team Rocket. The point being, those fan games were basically cool little what-if questions, but they didn't really go far away from the source material. Which, granted,
they're a fan game, so that makes sense, right? Like, we're not criticizing it for that.
I guess that's the big point I'm saying. When I wanted to address it to say I took a look at it, but that's kind of, it doesn't
really address the thing that
I was trying to think about.
Yeah.
So, that covered, here was essentially what I tried to come up with.
So now all of the other things aside, we're gonna, so how to improve but keep as many original fans happy as possible. Sorry,
Yes.
I had to read it with just like a mouthful.
The hope, so this was what I had come up with to this point of if I was trying to actually make a substantial change that doesn't make it stop, or that makes it still feel like Pokemon without it being what Pokemon has been exactly for the last,
which is just
turn-based,
like what the fan games have done and things like that, and basically focusing on the same gameplay elements.
Now this is a rough design, but here was essentially the biggest change. Pretty much everything stays the same except for turn-based.
No, hold on. I think that one thing that they touched on with Scarlet and Violet, and that I think people would credit Palworld to being a better thing, is the fact that it has a multiplayer. Scarlet and Violet added multiplayer, right? But at the end of the day, there wasn't really anything you could do. You
like
could run around, you could do the same thing,
Yeah.
but like you didn't interact with each other. And that was something even we talked about when we played it. It's like, this had the beginnings, and like, it's like you go in, you order something at a restaurant that says garlic pasta, and then you sit down to eat it, and it's literally marinara, but it's got a little garlic on top of it. It's like, but you said it was this, but then there was no actual garlic in here. Like,
if you boil down, because
so
this
I'm gonna add this note,
because the topic or what we're talking about is boiling things down to their essence. The multiplayer aspect of Scarlet and Violet didn't exist.
Yeah.
There was versus, but the co-op of wandering around meant nothing. Sure, you could see the same Pokemon, but you couldn't really help.
You couldn't do a double battle.
You couldn't do double battles. You couldn't help your opponent. You didn't even do the same fight in the large monster battles. And the only real thing you did, the only real thing that you did was you could set up a picnic, and the one you brought could make eggs with one of the other people's Pokemon.
Right.
That was the only real cooperative multiplayer thing you could do outside of the normal trading, battling, the multiplayer aspects that have already existed.
I guess that's worth mentioning too, is that there's trading and battling.
So,
I don't know if there's an E there, but that's fine. But yeah, I think that if they would want to improve, because that's what we're talking about here, that needs to be a part of the improvement, which is why it's in the list.
Turn-based RPG transforms into autonomous action RPG. AARPG.
Okay, how do you spell autonomous? I'm just gonna
Just
put AARPG.
Now, what does that mean? To me, it meant you throw the Pokemon out.
Do you want me to draw the little thing that you showed me?
Sure, let's go with that. So we're gonna go to a visual. Maybe change a page.
I could just draw it down here.
All right.
Okay, so we have
picture,
and then our Pokemon.
The goal of this thought process, or line of thinking, so this is the trying to present, or if I were to present a design, that could then be refined in meetings or like other criterias, but just what I felt like would be a good as a professional, like, engineered design. If I was presented with this task, this might be something I would take to the next meeting and be like, here's a place to start, maybe, let's see where it goes. This is where I came to. So,
hello, Vampy. You came just in time for our discussion.
Imagine it like Pokken Tournament with the circular or oval shaped battle arena. And then, instead of you controlling them directly like in Pokken Tournament, or the whole changing between 3D fighter and 2D fighter, which is a unique thing that Pokken did, which was kind of cool, but a little weird, but was an interesting try. Yes, for the most part, Vampy. And essentially take the element from...
I guess I could do two because, oh, also, hi, TK.
Hi, TK. Then take the next phase of battle system from an action RPG, or the, like...
There we go.
Pseudo active time battles, and add a bar for the Pokemon. The two changes that I make, or I was thinking of making, would be, first, separate attacks and stat and defensive maneuvers into two separate categories. So that way you could have 4 attacks and 4 defensive maneuvers. With that, for this one design, and granted, we've had discussions where I've even refined this otherwise, so this has even changed,
So
but this is just the way that I presented.
Attack.
This is not how it would look in the game, but...
Well, yeah, they wouldn't just be, like, hovering, but...
You could also say that as well, Vampy. That's...
Yeah, that was one thing, like, this entire concept, so when you play Digimon World, right, you are the tamer back here, and then you just sort of, like, call out to your Pokemon, which you basically don't do anything.
Oh, Digimon.
You just... Or, sorry, your Digimon. And then they just sort of, like, wander around, and they're just like, oh, and then I see each other, and I'm just gonna, like, shoot a little hot fireball or whatever. Like, attack, right?
Get rid of that.
That's kind of not like what Don's explaining, but that is a more primitive version of what you're explaining.
Essentially, and this isn't, like, a finite thing, this is just where I currently was at. In the next, there's going to be a break here coming up, so I'll just we'll take a pause
let me I was gonna say let me add 2 little guys because
oh, you want to do it like a double battle?
Yeah, like a double battle.
Okay.
So I'll scoot these guys over.
We'll update the diagram while this ad gets to playing, and then I'll go over it in a bit. Hi, Think Tank.
Hi, Think Tank.
We'll have little discussions while she kind of draws it a bit. Because I basically sat with Pokemon figures with Meg at one point and was just kind of going over this.
We'll have a Voltorb and... At the end game,
I see what... Okay.
Oh, okay. So you, like, actually take control of the Digimon. See, it's similar to that, but I'm sure Don will explain after the ad.
The ad will give Meg a chance to draw it. We'll be back in about a minute or two. And then I'll continue the explanation. For those who are subscribed,
enjoy me making this really sussy Bulbasaur.
Yes, Serenity. To answer that question, I believe you're here. That would be part of the concept, was that I'll go in deeper, and I'll repeat this at some point. There was a part of the concept of giving simple commands as a tamer, so I'll go in deeper with it, but essentially each Pokemon would have their own bar that's filling up when they can take action or listen, and you as the trainer have a bar that's filling up as well. The trainer basically would allow you to give those commands like the show, like dodge it or come to me. So if you want to reposition your Pokemon, you could say come here, or when you give it an attack, the commands would inherently have positionals that they want to be in or locations where they want to be, which I'll go into more depth when Meg has a bit more of it drawn out.
I'm just making this guy our sussy little guy.
All right.
Yeah, he's kind of our mascot for this, apparently. He's just a little red one.
Fine, whatever. Yes. Except, and I'll go deeper into this because I was hoping Meg would still be able to draw the bars, but she's coloring it instead of drawing the foundation.
Okay, bars,
just like Pokemon.
Bars. I'm drawing bars.
2 segments for each, so cut them in half.
Okay. I have colored markers, you guys.
Cut them in half.
Yeah, in half here. Doink,
yes.
doink. And then one is attack and one is defense moves. Spit those bars out now.
So, is everyone back from the ads?
Yeah, everyone's back.
All right. To continue with the discussion,
this is attack.
if this was still Pokemon, I would probably have you stay in the control of the trainer, where you can walk around the arena, staying on your half of it. So you could choose different locations and different viewpoints. Now, from that...
But not in the arena.
You're not in the arena. You can't go in.
And then your friends can be like, yay, you can do it.
Or if you have two of you, you can walk around each other and see. So essentially treat it more like what Pokemon is supposed to be, like a sport.
Right.
So now we're thinking of Pokemon like a sumo wrestling competition or boxing, depending on your preference. Where it is not about destroying your opponent, but about beating them in a sport. In this case, the point being... Yes, so kind of like the trainers are like, little, like imagine if it's Punch Out, but Little Mac's a Hitmonchan, and you're Doc. Get him, Little Mac, right? Doing this, whatever. So with this idea, and I did it this way because I wanted to allow the incorporation of double battles. Because originally if it was one-on-one, I was thinking to myself, well, then why wouldn't you just control the one Pokemon? Oh, because you want to be able to do double battles.
Well, in Scarlet and Violet, there was no double battles, so it was annoying.
For some of the gym battles there were, but it was few and far between. The point being, with this, you would basically be able to queue up a command to a Pokemon and basically tell it what you want it to do individually, and when its bar filled up enough, it would then do it when it can. So as the trainer, you're the one getting a bigger view of the field. You get to sell your commands. Now, to go through a scenario, this time not being a little cloudy brained while trying to play Parasite Eve. It looks like we have Kirby and Green Pluto.
It's a Bulbasaur!
Okay. So we got weird Kirby and a Bulbasaur.
Versus Voltorb and Pikachu.
Okay. So, if I'm player 1.
Okay.
And again, this would be the quick version so people can probably start following along a bit. The bar would fill up based on a few factors, but we'll just say for now, the main factor is their individual speed. So, have a faster Pokemon, it fills up its bar faster, both attack and defense. Or, essentially, it'd be like their attack bar would fill up based on their speed, and a combination between attack and special attack. And their defensive bar would fill up based on their speed and their defense and special defense. With that in mind, the battle starts, all bars are filled at 0. Same with the trainer's bar.
So the trainer has an action bar.
So the trainer, you have an action bar as the trainer as well, but it's only one. That action bar is when you as the trainer can do something like recall the Pokemon, so swap, use an item, or give special commands. And special commands being like the anime, that I wanted to do that for myself, so the idea would be a special command could be something like dodge it or block, where you could tell a certain Pokemon to go into a specific stance. Granted, the whole idea of those stances would be certain moves would inherently come with those sorts of things. Now, what do I mean when I say certain moves would come with those inherent? For example, if you were to use something like fly, your Pokemon has to inherit the ability to fly. So they're flying in the air now, which means they have all the aspects of flying in the air at the time. And the Pokemon's literally in the air until they finish and come down. If the Pokemon can fly, you as the trainer could give a special command and just tell it to start flying, which would then allow it to dodge certain ground attacks. In contrast, that would also make you weak to certain things. At that point, starting to think of it more like if you've played Baldur's Gate 3, where thinking of you're in a fly stance as you're wet. Flying would make it so you don't get hit by this, but you do take more damage from that. Things like that sort of thing. That's what I mean by inherent. In similarities, if you told a fighting Pokemon to use counter, it's automatically going to essentially take the block stance where it will take less damage from physical attacks, and the bonus thing of counter being it will counterattack anyone that hits it while it's in that stance. Keeping all those things in mind, to go through a scenario of a round, since you have time before the Pokemon does the action to give it commands before the bar fills up, essentially that is your turn. The point of there being 2 segments, as some people might have heard me mention either yesterday before the movie or other times through my ramblings, some maneuvers would take 2 bars. Now that would be something like Solar Beam, Hyper Beam, all the ones that... What did you do?
I scooted it over.
All the things that are essentially need a recharge would take multiple bars to do. In contrast, since the idea of splitting between attack and defense, all of the 4 defense maneuvers you would get, so again, now you changed it where the Pokemon can have up to 8 moves, encouraging people to use defensive or stat building abilities. If you used an attack, like, say, Metal Claw, where it has a stat boost as well as an attack, it would have to take a bar from each.
Oh, Metal Claw. Okay, yeah, because it raises your defense and...
Because, well, Metal Claw is like, your attack stat increases and you do damage. So you would need both bars at the same time to do it.
Yeah, and so it would take it down just like,
But it would take up, different ones would have different inheritance. This is just again, this is a rough idea.
Just like...
Essentially what this would require is...
both of them.
Revisiting all of the moves and figuring out what they do and what things they come inherited with. The other concept I was toying with was the idea of the countering being a stagger sort of thing. So a scenario in this case would be, I wish Kirby was some kind of... I'm going to call Kirby a Machamp. Or a Machop.
A Machop.
Or something that...
I mean, I was just doodling, so...
Something else.
Let's make him Hitmonlee. Does that work?
Whatever you can draw.
Oh, don't you dare ask me whatever I can draw. I can draw everything.
Uh-huh. That's why it looks like an Among Us.
No.
Among Us Lee.
Hitmonlee doesn't have arms, right?
He does have arms.
There, Hitmonlee.
Okay. Sure.
Among Us just doesn't have arms.
So now that there's a Hitmonlee there, let's say the Trainer 2 told Hitmonlee to do low kick. Or rolling kick even, but let's just stick with something simple. Low kick. Okay, that's a melee ranged attack. And he told him to attack the Pikachu. Pikachu was told to use Thundershock, which is a mid-range attack.
So he needs to be like here.
Well, so the Pikachu's electric attack, that's mid-range, let's say, because it's not Thunderbolt or whatever another longer range attack might be, like Thunder. So we'll say it's Thundershock, mid-range. He's got to get close enough for it to make contact. Well, since they're moving when they can do the command, as soon as Pikachu starts to run forward to get to position, and Hitmonlee is running towards whichever target, Pikachu's going to be in range before Hitmonlee. So Pikachu does Thundershock.
1 sec, Dot. I gotta reload the...
Reload?
Oh, Photoshop does this thing where I have to relaunch it.
Pikachu does Thundershock, while Hitmonlee is still walking towards Pikachu. There's a chance that at one point, I'm toying with this, I don't know if it's a yes or a no, but I was thinking of having there be some kind of stagger chance where it might either eat their bar or basically make them flinch. Might not necessarily be a thing, so we just keep, instead of critical hits, but could just keep critical hits. Make them less likely or a different mathematical equation for it. Either way, the Hitmonlee is running forward, the Pikachu does the Thundershock, Hitmonlee gets hit by it, Hitmonlee keeps going forward, does his attack.
Right.
Now that he's in melee range, Pikachu didn't go too much farther forward because Hitmonlee kind of got there. The trainer then issues another command to Pikachu. Like, say, Thundershock again, because they just like doing Thundershock. The Pikachu would then, at that point, because it wants to be in a favorable range, back up, which then would make Hitmonlee have to move towards it again to do another attack. So Pikachu is then basically moving around the field, trying to stay in a favorable range. And that's kind of what the autonomous action RPG means, is the Pokemon are moving based off of, at that point, their attitudes, maybe their natures, maybe the attacks you told them to do. Now, granted, that could mean that if a Pokemon goes into melee, and you should stay in melee. So maybe a smart trainer might do something like Quick Attack, where they could, maybe some of the segments of Quick Attack is they hit a melee opponent and then back up to a certain range, kind of getting out of there for dodging attacks of certain kinds or other abilities. Now, since there's a nice little Voltorb on the field, we know what Voltorbs like to do. They like to self-destruct. If you commanded your Voltorb to self-destruct, he has to go to the middle of the arena. That would be the idea of autonomous, is depending on the commands you give, there would be certain locations on the battlefield that a Pokemon would need to stand to do those attacks. Center of the arena, so that way it hits everyone.
And then they all died.
But the cool part of this that I was thinking would be the ability for trainers to do combinations later, like Rock Throw or Rock Tomb, or other abilities that essentially could leave things on the battlefield. So if someone were to do Rock Tomb, it would essentially maybe change it to be more of a defensive maneuver version of Rock Tomb, or maybe like Stealth Rocks, where now it places these traps around the arena, and your Pokemon is trying to, if they can, autonomously try to put them into those locations. So, for example, let's say you had a Hitmonchan, or Hitmonchamp, maybe, or not Hitmonchamp, a Machamp, and he does something like Seismic Toss. If there's a trap on the battlefield, like Stealth Rocks, that are near where the trainer is, or where the Pokemon would have to go by to get hurt by it, or maybe Toxic Spikes, they might throw them into the spikes. So you get the damage of the throw, plus the combo damage of them throwing them into a trap, as they're autonomously trying to look for maximizing these things, because they're trained by you to do things, and they're working together with their allies. Similarly, if you had, say, a Pokemon do Rock Throw, and the rock hits the Pokemon, it stays there, and you have another one do Rock Smash, and there's a rock on the field, it could hit the rock instead and cause an AoE damage and hit multiple opponents instead of just hitting one.
Or like this, he goes, and then the rocks.
Or if you have cover, maybe you have a Pokemon like Inteleon that is like a spy shooter, and he might, if there's cover nearby, he might go hide behind the cover. But that's really annoying if you've got two long-range Pokemon and he's hiding behind cover, shooting Snipe Shot from behind cover. Oh, I know. Let's use Razor Leaf, because Razor Leaf has the ability to go around cover and hit someone behind it. Or Swift, where it tracks and homes in on things, and now you've got like Magic Missile, where it hits, and or if they can't see, the Pokemon has to maneuver. But what happens when your Pokemon...
Hi, Carbon Fox. Welcome in.
But what would happen if your Pokemon wanders too far, or they're out of position, or you don't like where they are? Well, now you have, as a trainer, you want to switch. Pull them back. Now switching is saving them from a bad situation, like Hitmonlee's going to do High Jump Kick over the cover and is about to kick your Pikachu.
Oh, hold on. Let me illustrate.
How do you know? Because you just heard Trainer 2 say, Hitmonlee, High Jump Kick. And now you've got the whole thing of trainers are saying commands out loud, and you as the other trainer have ears. And that's how you could kind of use your ability to, maybe you don't want to call out moves fast, or maybe you do. Maybe you're trying to psych out your opponent, or maybe you get trainer abilities that make it so you have such a connection with your Pokemon that you don't have to say them out loud. Yes, she's having fun playing with her drawings. So with that, but that leads to the next thing I was thinking with the trainer. Well, I've got a meter here. My Pikachu's about to get High Jump Kick. Well, instead of letting Pikachu, who's about to get High Jump Kick because the Hitmonlee jumped into the air and he's about to come down, you swap him out.
Swap him out?
Shh. Yeah, so you withdraw him. Yes. So the mental, at that point it would be like trainer abilities is what I was kind of leaning for, where it's like, maybe you can use items better because you have trained yourself as a trainer to have abilities, or you've chosen the class of a breeder, so you can use potions faster. So now you use items, but it's on a quicker cooldown. Or maybe you're a coach, and so you can give better special commands like move here, come to me, dodge that, block, fly, dig, whatever kinds of things. Extra, not Pokemon attacks that you can tell them to do something, like find cover, etc.
Good eye, Miko.
But if you swap one out, the next Pokemon that comes out, unlike the first ones you start with, they would be rested because they've been in the Pokeball. Now they each start with 1 meter of each. So they could come out and immediately you could tell them to do a defensive or aggressive maneuver.
There you go.
Granted, all of this is still happening at a relative action pace, but is slowed down by the universal time that is going by for each Pokemon to do their things, and the trainer can still move around. Now, the whole point is, depending on your imagination and how you would visualize it, it might have different speeds. In fact, technically, it could be a variable of battle speed, like other games where you'd be like, I'm a more casual turn-based person. I want it to move really slowly so I can really decide what I want my Pokemon to do. Granted, they're going to stand there unless you tell them something like, go over there, go over here, in which case it could almost feel like a low unit count of RTS.
Yeah.
So at that point, you could even go to triple battles or, 2 battle. But this was just being a 2 battle thing to show why it would need to be each Pokemon has a meter and how fast they can do your commands. And the whole point being, at any point you could give your command and they'll do the last command they were given as soon as they can.
Right, and I think that's one thing that I like the design of your AARPG is the fact that a lot of people play RPGs and they enjoy Pokemon because it's not complicated. Like, right. It is more of like a cozy kind of thing. Whereas if this design, like,
yes,
doesn't
like a command
make you
queue,
have to, like, be good at action games.
The command queue being they're going to do the last thing you told them to do. Which you could just look at them and Pikachu Thunderbolt. It's like, I heard you. I'm getting ready to do it. You see it charging. I'm gonna do it. Yeah. Which you could also be like, hey, Bulbasaur, use Solar Beam, and then as the trainer bar, you say, hide behind cover or block, and so he's just sitting there blocking the whole time. Or because you have a defensive maneuver, you'll be like, hey, Bulbasaur, I want you to do Solar Beam, but I know you need to have 2 bars to do it. Hey, why don't you go ahead and do, like, Sweet Scent while you're charging up for Solar Beam? Versus the other player could look at that Bulbasaur and be like, he hasn't done an attack in a while. He might be getting ready to do Solar Beam. Maybe I should do something that might slow him down, or maybe wrap him up, or something that might hold them down, and other little things like that. Just moving the fight to being not necessarily a fighting game where someone playing it feels they have to button mash, but standing there forever wouldn't do anything. Now, the last thing that I was thinking about, because I want to incorporate the people who just want to play and maybe do whatever, there could be a point where there's an attitude thing to try to shift more and the Pokemon starts to react to how you as the player play or train them. If you have a kid that, like, doesn't ever give a command to their Pokemon, and it's just sitting there, like, taking damage, and it's like, I haven't been given any commands, it might just decide to do something. So, why not?
In very, very much in the sense of it being autonomous, like, because you think about the little kid, right?
Yep.
Trying to keep with this idea that it really does need to be,
Yep.
family friendly. You've got this kid who just basically throws their Pokemon out and spams the button. That's how they play Pokemon. I played Pokemon that way as a child.
Did too at one point.
And they basically could throw their guys out and there would be, I don't know if you would call it an AI or if it'd just be a program that would just, if you don't say anything, like if you don't ever command them, they eventually will just go up there and do the stuff themselves.
Exactly, Bree. That was the idea. So it's like, if I've got an Impeleon that's just standing there, but that could also lower its trust in you, that could also be bad. Because if you got an Impeleon and it likes to do, say, Ice Beam, that doesn't give it any stab. That doesn't, maybe it's not super effective against the opponent.
Kid, it wouldn't matter, because like you can level your Pikachu to level 100 and go fight Brock, and Thundershock will kill it.
But that also vice versa would happen to the idea of if you traded them away and they don't like the other trainer, they could scream at them the whole time, and it'll just sit there and might just take a nap and be like,
if you don't have the badge that like,
yeah, exactly,
they're old. Like there's a lot of things that you could copy from the old version of what we know what is Pokemon, and could go into that AARPG battle that wouldn't even make it not feel like Pokemon anymore. That's the big thing there.
Now, the thing about this also is the idea that now those maneuvers that very few people would do, like this Pokemon can't swap out, well, now it's a lot more important, because like doing mean look to a Pokemon that's like, you try to lure it in to close range and then you mean look it, and now you're doing stuff like a bunch of attacks, because now it can't. Now the trainer on the other side can't use the Pokeball or can't use their ability to withdraw it.
Exactly, Miko.
Which means at that point it should stand to reason that if it tried to do something like U-turn, it can't, because it can't escape. Things like that. And also taking into the account that a starter Pokemon would essentially have one ability on each bar, because most starters have one attack, one defense, or I shouldn't say defense. It's basically one attack and then one defensive or stat changing maneuver, whether that's debuffing your opponent or buffing yourself.
More than defense.
Yeah,
it's like attack and support,
damaging and non-damaging abilities. But now you have 8 abilities, so you don't have to have a Pokemon that basically comes out, does a bunch of stat increasing, substitute, all those kinds of things. They just
kind of like how they adapted like HMs and TMs to not being on Pokemon. I think that was a good idea that Pokemon did. Granted, I wasn't a huge fan of the design of the bike that we had in Scarlet and Violet, but that's more like a personal thing than a design flaw. I think giving us some kind of other Pokemon or Pokemons to do our HMs and TMs, I didn't really bother me all that much. Or another way that they could have done it is that once you've unlocked the ability, pretty much any Pokemon that could use an HM or TM just can. Like if you've got something that can use fly in your inventory, it can just fly. Like it doesn't have to have it in their move set. Why does it have to take up a slot, you know?
Pokemon.
Where did I draw? Oh. The Pokemons are here. Think tank.
The Bidoof and the Zigzagoon would go back to having the purpose of being a normal type that can have lots of different attacks. Pokemanes.
Pokemanes. Oh God.
But
oh, please do be silly.
The whole concept of that being basically that, other than having to I guess to go with the HM/TM kind of thing, I was thinking of if you have an HM. Any Pokemon that could do it, you just open your HMs and say, I would like to fly. And it just says, you don't have any Pokemon that can fly.
Yeah.
If you do, it's like, oh, which one would you like to have you fly? Which one would you like to do surf? It's not necessarily an attack. They don't have to have the attack. It's more fun if you had the HM where opening it and using the HM as travel just works. As long as you have a Pokemon that could learn it. They don't have to learn it and remove it from a maneuver. So that way it still feels like you're on an adventure, not an island tour, a guided tour.
Yeah, because you didn't like that about Sun and Moon.
I felt like it took away the adventure portion of it when it was in Sun and Moon, where it was like, here, blow a whistle and it'll call a thing. It's like, but it's not like I'm doing it on I don't have to have a team that's like, oh, this is my Pokemon that helps me fly, and this is my one that does X and Y, you know. Point being, when is the game?
Well, I guess that's kind of a way we'd like to go towards, but there's one thing I want to mention, and this kind of goes back to the Palworld thing. I think that these two elements are, memeing aside, anybody who really thought that the entire phrase "take notes" meant anything, the battle system, right? And the use of multiplayer, these are the only things out of Palworld that you really could take and say they took notes on. I don't think that there's anything else that really applies, given the fact that it is a turn-based RPG. There's not anything else in Palworld. Everything else in Palworld is just, you like creator games. You like builder games, excuse me. But like, a better battle system, of which Palworld didn't have. It
didn't even have a battle system. The Pokemon were tools.
You throw your dude out,
and they just
right?
whatever,
and they just like wander around until they.
And then they just a target, and they jump backwards, and they try to do one attack, and they just loop thugh randomly, and maybe you could suggest something.
Is that it's not turn-based RPG, right? It's not Temu, or not Temu.
Temtem.
Temu! It's not Temtem.
It's not that either,
which was cards. Like, it's not... This going to this makes sense.
And then everything else that Pokemon has, that stays the same.
That goes in there. All this stuff is in there. The ads... Oh, God, Think Tank, don't say that. Don't say... That... Oh, my God. Oh, goodness. Anyways, slip of the tongue. You guys know what I mean.
The point being that if we were given... that would be what I would present as the only thing. Of course, then also saying, like, why not have the ability to have more quests and make it go farther into the open world, where it's like, maybe I want to be a trainer, or a gym leader, in which case if you chose the
I guess I'll go ahead and add that since we're kind of adding to our thing now.
The whole point being, as the trainer having their own commands and abilities that they contribute to the battlefield, which honestly I feel like most of the time the game, most people don't even use a potion. They don't even use any items while they're playing. But if it's like I'm sitting there and I got a full bar as a trainer, hey, I could use an item. And it might be a way to... It also have the effect of calling your Pokemon to run back to you to use the item. Because they got to be within range of you to use it. So you might run up to the ring and be like, hey, come over here. Let me heal you while you're behind cover. Because we did rock throw and it... boom, 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 and it hit these areas, and now there's a giant rock in the way. Or maybe it does earthquake or something, and it shoots up a spine. Or maybe there are new moves that add effects on the terrain.
The way that Pokemon is now, there is actually no reason to add anything like jobs or anything like expertise, because there's no way that it would actually augment the gameplay. Whereas something like this battle system, there's actually like a reason to do it at all.
There's room to balance it because, like, for example, let's say you were a gym leader type job, right? Which means you restrict yourself to one type. So every Pokemon on your team has to have either their main or secondary type of a certain type. Then your Pokemon would gain some benefit, like maybe the super effective doesn't hurt them as much, or maybe when they use that type attack. So if you're a steel type or a Sabrina. So if you're psychic type, anytime one of your Pokemon does a psychic type move, maybe it, I don't know, takes less percentage of their bar so they can do it more often, or maybe it's got a higher percent chance or something that's still kind of balanced, keeping it in mind. I'm just spitballing here with, again, this isn't a really rough thing, but it would have room for that kind of thing. Come up with a few ideas, come up with a few more fleshing out the whole design document. That was essentially the thing I would have presented as a foundation to start with. When we had talked about it at some random time, I had thought of literally just an action RPG, so this was the closest I could get that felt like it would ostracize the least amount of old fans who like it being turn-based, while still feeling approachable.
And still being a Pokemon
game.
Yeah.
This would be what I would present if I had the job to do that, and I don't know where it would go. But I guess this segues into the last point that we were kind of talking about, but... Oh yeah, classes like in-game. I mean, it could be. Maybe if you're maybe that's why you can use more potions. You're a clerk and you spend so much time in the clerk store as the shop market, Pokemart, as like a part-time job. Or maybe you're a breeder, so you get better if they're like multiple generations down. They have a better connection with you and they'll listen to you better because you're a breeder. Or maybe you're a Team Rocket member where you had to steal the Pokemon from another trainer NPC by using some special mechanic like a snag ball or something, and you're literally going around stealing them and doing quests for whoever. Yeah, researcher could get more.
Oh,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, see, Think Tank, like...
Or maybe that
would be really cool.
Or if you're and higher, yeah, sure. Or like as a researcher, or as a breeder, your Pokemon that have, higher base stats or something. No, not like that. But I mean, like, you have, if they have a lower IV or EV or some hidden value, it could go up or change. But yeah, sure, you could do, exactly, you could do the friendship thing, but
yeah, something more integration with multiplayer, both co-op and competitively. Just like it's one of those things where, like, they've already proved that they could do it with the connectivity without, like, making it an MMO or making it like Fortnite or something. I'm just saying, like, even if it was just you could play it co-op 4-player, like in Scarlet and Violet, right? It was just there. You can see that they want to add multiplayer, but, like, where do you go from there? That.
Well, because it would be no different if you went into a fight with somebody and your friend wanted to join in. You're fighting like a horde of Pokemon and there's like 5 of them. You throw out one, your friend throws out another one.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of my player one here, it'd just be, you know.
Yeah, exactly, Bree. Like, that, ideas like that is the whole point of, like, where you could continue spitballing from here. But yeah, and then player 2 is just standing right next to you. Player 3 could stand there. Player 4, there at that point, the only restriction would be the size of the arena and, like, if the other trainer's, like, willing to participate. Because it's like, I don't want to have to control 4 of my Pokemon while each one of you has one. But, you know, maybe you can do that kind of things, or maybe there are people who are like 4v4, you know, they're like, it's a whole gang. Or maybe that's Team Rocket, they're gonna fight you with 4 and you can only control 2 at a time. So if your buddy came by and you're doing 2-player co-op, they threw out 2 Pokemon and now it's 4v4. Or maybe each Team Rocket member only has 1 Pokemon, so you're fighting 4v4, but you have 2 and they have 2, and they're all running around the field doing all sorts of things, and it's like a little RTS battle almost, but
the other
slower
thing
paced.
too is that this entire, like, design and concept, like, it's not easy, but it's not impossible. And
also,
I think that's something that you guys are gonna just have to trust in Don's expertise here, because a lot of people might look at this and be like, well, of course they won't do it because it's too much work.
Oh no, it's a lot of work.
But, like, it's not like one of those things where it's just like, Don says this a lot, it's not if you can do something, it's should you do something. And so the design aspect is far more important than the actual execution, because you can always find a way to make your game engine or your models or something, like, do the thing you need to do. That's just if you're a good programmer, which obviously Don is. So, like, I guess I'm trying to, like,
well, again, we're
it's hard to go from that this is just like a crazy idea to this is
no.
game design.
This is a design. Mm-hmm. This is the design portion of it.
Right.
Once you get past the design portion and you would have a clear everything written out. So at this point, before we would move forward, it would be all of the jobs or all of the, like, classes that a trainer could be, or not a trainer, like if you were a professor, if you were a trainer, if you're a breeder, all the things that could be throughout all the Pokemon. Mm-hmm. You're a rebel, you're a this or that, whatever. All of those would be ironed out and, in theory, balanced to each other with the design. All of the maneuvers and moves that would be included would be reworked over and thought about, like, okay, what would be other effects with this effect in mind? What's their range it would need to be? What's the secondary effects, if any secondary effects? How do we want to handle critical hits? How do we want to handle the base stats? In my case, legendaries, you don't catch legendaries. They're like a summon or a help. You know, you get like a special item and they're a legendary. No one catches them. In fact, the fact that legendary is like there are starter Pokemon that would technically be more rare than a legendary nowadays, because everyone can catch a legendary. In fact, sometimes they're required to. But unless you had 2 copies, you couldn't get every starter Pokemon.
Right, yeah. So, it's like,
legendary Pokemon shouldn't be caught. They should be like what they are, a force of nature. You don't catch them. They're just there. You don't use them in fights. You could use them like a summon. Maybe.
I think if there was...
but that's my opinion on it.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. That could just be like, that would be my 2 cents if I were doing it. But if they're like, no, we still want kids to be able to catch them and have these really strong things in this arena, it's like, okay. I mean, it wouldn't break it. It would just be overpowered, but,
Kitsune, thank you for the welcome to the Game Grotto. I hope you've been enjoying our discussion, or if you just popped in.
But yes, Miko, exactly.
Yeah. We've been talking about designing a better Pokemon game. What we would keep, what we would get rid of, what we would change, based on just like our professional opinion. But yeah, I think that the funny thing about these kinds of exercises is you look at everything, you're like, okay, so when do we start? And
I don't have the rights.
That's the funny thing about Pokemon, is that like, as much as we love it, like we're stuck in this position where it's like, what would you do? You could just make a fan game, and then you could make no money on it.
This is too much money for a fan game. Too much work for a fan game.
Too much work for a fan game, which is probably why no fans have ever done it, because it's like the amount of work that needs to go into making Pokemon get to the next level progressively in its design.
If I were to do this as a prototype, even for fun, yeah,
exactly. Balthras. Or you make a clone, and that's and as we've seen, they really aren't pushing Pokemon. Well, like
Temtem isn't a rival. Temtem is advertisement. It's just it's still Pokemon.
Yeah.
If you going back to like this, I've said a few times, but boiling down Temtem, it's still a Pokemon game.
Right.
Palworld isn't even close to Pokemon. They're only in hot water because it looks like they took models directly and then just added a few triangles or cones to them, and it's like, that's literally the only thing that legal can protect in video games, is the literal model or the exact like fingerprints of a character, because you can make a human that looks realistic, but the topography is always going to be slightly different. There's always a little bit, but with humans, it's like you can't really copyright the human, but you could copyright like the humanoid. Like that's literally, you can't do that. But because they're like a fox or a wolf, and the topography of the 3D model is, from what I saw, at least in one picture, almost exact. It's like, you're getting real. That's rough. So, which is the only reason they did look closer. Oh yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm clarifying, like, the point being that this could go that route. And I guess, if you don't mind if I segue, or do you want to segue it?
What I was going to say is, when you're modeling, there's a lot of free assets and things that you do that are bases, right? Mm-hmm. And you can use like a humanoid base. There's no rights on those bases. That actual model, right?
Would be like, you can't have the copyright over the color red.
Yeah,
but exactly. You can have
But using the topology from another game is like, that is the only reason and the only thing that people should really be like. That's the only
concerned
Pokemon
about.
Could really be like, that's illegal. That is stealing assets, right? That Bree and I have been talking, and I've been talking to Dot about what we talked about too, Bree, about like copyright and stuff. And at the end of the day,
it's only the
amount of protection on the video games in general is extremely low.
It's really it's in the realm of society. What they decide is
it is
too
all
much.
about what you decide that you want to support. So it's very much up to the consumer, which is, it's hard sometimes to be the designer in that position, but I think that, like, I think this is going to segue into what you were going to talk about,
okay.
Our final point that we wanted to make, Don.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, which was the fact that Pokemon really, like, boiling things down, Pokemon doesn't have a competitor.
Yeah.
They essentially have a monopoly nowadays on the creature collecting RPG game.
Yes.
Action or otherwise. Because, like, Digimon's kind of off there doing their own thing, which literally Digimon is Pokemon with guns. They literally are little creatures that have guns, but their design philosophy is cybernetics and robotic and angular, and they're sharper.
The philosophy of Digimon is completely different. Same with the monsters in Dragon Quest.
But the point I was about to make is, if you think back to when Pokemon was still making like pretty large advancements between red, blue, and yellow and green, to silver, gold, and crystal, to ruby, sapphire, and emerald. At those times, they had competitions such as, at the time, they still had Final Fantasy that were in the same ballpark of a turn-based or semi-turn-based RPG. You still had games like Jade's Cocoon that was literally a turn-based monster creator, but they made the elements more like a wheel, like Avatar. So you had earth, fire, water, and air, and those were like a circle, but it was more about survival and like a harsh environment where you're using these monsters like weapons, but you as they are trying to kill you as the trainer, and you're like the village. It was more of a tribal kind of setting. And they also had at the same time, what was the other? Dragon's Quest 3 and stuff were coming out on the Game Boy as well. So direct competition as far as literally a turn-based game where you collect creatures. Same game, but then now the Dragon Quest, not Monster Quest. No, and I didn't even mention Monster Rancher. Monster Rancher 1, Monster Rancher 2, those were still late 90s, same timeline as Pokemon. So there were a bunch of different turn-based or semi-turn-based monster collecting or monster breeding or raising games that were all coming out around the same time, and then Monster Quest. But with like Dragon Quest, they kind of moved back away, and they're now more like Final Fantasy now, where it's
one of the things
they're still humanoids, or it's back to just the old turn-based games where it's not about the monster collecting, it's about the story and the adventure and things like that.
One of the things that really pushes games like, or companies like Square Enix and just like the RPG genre to continue to improve is the fact that there are so many different companies that are making RPGs. And so, like, I think one of the reasons why Pokemon, basically, they just don't ever, they're not super worried about it either one way or the other.
I think it's a combination of they don't want to risk losing what they have.
Yeah.
And there isn't someone saying or pushing something out there that's competition, where that was making them
competition.
Yeah.
Because what competition forces the company to make something that's good
Miko,
enough.
that's another good way to put it. Yeah.
Well, because like if you think about it from the side scroller platformer perspective.
Yeah, this is a conversation that we had recently. Yeah.
Sonic and Mario constantly push each other to make better versions of their IPs, right? Because like Mario Odyssey comes out.
Yep.
Sonic Frontier comes out.
Yep.
If Mario Odyssey didn't push the envelope to make it as good as possible as what they thought was the best, or like what we've talked about is what would be better, then Sonic would not have to try. Like, Sonic would basically make Frontier and make Mario look bad. And then we'd go, well, I mean, that Mario was okay, but like, look at Sonic over here. Like, it's healthy. It's a healthy rival. Like, that they work to make something better for everybody by being there for each other to fight each other, basically, on the realm of, you know, improvement, or in the realm of like design even. Yep.
And we were thinking like it's really the rivals help.
Yeah, that was the point I was making.
If there was something that's like missing right now in the why does Pokemon not have to do something better, our first guess would be they don't have a rival.
Yeah, there's just
it's
like they can
borderline monopoly.
They do. I do think they have a monopoly, and I think that's why people were trying
well,
to
that's the point. Like even with something like we were thinking like Temtem, it's like, oh, so I could just play Pokemon? It's like, yeah, you could just play Pokemon. It's still turn-based. Maybe the numbers or the math has been changed slightly, but it's still ultimately Pokemon. Even with what Palworld's trying to do.
Yeah.
Without Pokemon, Palworld wouldn't have done what they did, so it's still just Pokemon. Even if they're not literally Pokemon, they are trying to be, which means without Pokemon, there's no Palworld, which means it's just advertising Pokemon, because it's like if they try to make a new design, it's like Pokemon comes out with new designs. Can't wait for the Palworld update, since they weren't going to add their own things, because they're literally trying to take from the third best-selling Switch game.
Exactly.
So it's a console exclusive, and they sold over 24 million copies of Scarlet Violet.
Yeah.
So
it's one of those things, and that kind of segues into the whole entire idea of, you know, we are video game developers. I would love to make this game.
Sure.
I would love to make a game where it was a competitor for Pokemon, where they basically took this concept and then
or something like it,
and they improved upon it in a way that they thought was good, and then they went with it and made it that Pokemon into it. But as we are now,
we're two people.
We're two people.
Realistically speaking,
we can't even compete really. If we really get down to it, right? Like, we could make something and it would be amazing, and it could be, like, go viral because it's amazing, like, indie game title. It's like, whoa, everyone loves it, it's successful, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, we can't make Pokemon.
Well, not as we are. We can't be a rival to that.
Like, yeah, not as we are. Exactly, that's the point. So it's kind of one of those things where it is a little bit of a bummer. And I wish that there was something pushing Pokemon to be better, but really the only thing that's going to get them to get an idea is boycotting it, and that does not seem like fun.
I mean, honestly, this would take a while even if you had a lot of resources, but that would be if you had to make it with Pokemon. I have been thinking of ways that this could... It's like, why bother asking Pokemon when we could just try? But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Yep. See, I think that's the thing with it. Pokemon is big, but it's their characters. Mm-hmm. And really, it would be making something or doing something that either has a similar level of love or society has to be willing to accept.
Right, and that's that, like we were talking about, like, what's the status quo, what's acceptable, and things like that. That really changes what the big companies do, and it's just like one of those things where it's funny that a lot of times people are like, wow, indie game developers can do so much better than these AAAs and stuff, but a lot of the time those indie developers are like groups of 50 people, and some, like, I know for a fact that there's big companies that are hiring like firing a majority of their teams just because, like, they can't afford to keep them and stuff. So it's like the line between what's AAA and what's indie is going to continue to be blurred. Yeah. To where literally every single company is just going to be skeleton crew. That's a good way to put it. And then either indies will go back to like what Dawn and I are, is we're actually self-funded, we're actually a small team, or there just won't be any at all, right? Because this is why, because of Pokemon doing things where they're not gonna, do that.
I mean, they don't have to.
If we continue to buy them, which we do because we like Pokemon.
I mean, I like Pokemon.
I actually a robot and a slime.
Well,
jokes aside, but yes.
There is. I did come up more recently with a way that we could make a game.
Are we going to talk about that, Dawn? Because
not really.
I don't think we should. I think if we do decide to do that, we should keep it a surprise. But we have talked about ideas of basically turning this concept into something for one of our own ideas.
We don't have to make it with all 1,000 plus Pokemon, right, with all the moves. We can do our own thing.
So, like,
at least 100. It would have to be. That's the only number I gave you. It's like it'd have to be at least 100 different things. But how would we tackle it where it was still lovable characters? That was still like, there's no way anyone could say they're the same. We have to do the things like I talked about that Palworld should have done, like our own design. Exactly. Just something that's like, this is a sizable amount. We'd have to come up with this much stuff. We'd also have to come up with lots of lore between each one of them, because I feel like people latch on to certain Pokemon because of the Pokedex entries or because of the history of why that creature might exist, or how they discovered it, or whatever it might be, and what kind of world would we put it in, all sorts of things.
Well, Balthros, you kind of hit the nail on the head there, but it's something that I honestly think would be a lot of fun to do, but I just don't know. It's difficult to look at an idea and then decide to make that idea into a project. You know what I mean? Hi, Katie.
Night, a little bit. The part about Yokai Watch that I mentioned was Yeah, I'll just restate it. Was Yokai Watch had different creatures, but because from what I understand, it was still mainly a turn-based, or it like didn't depart too far away from it. It wasn't. It might have pushed Pokemon to try to make a little higher quality models, but realistically, it was still just a turn-based monster game. So it's still Pokemon. So
I think the only thing that will make...
That was kind of like what we mentioned.
The only thing that will make Pokemon...
If Ubu was here, he'd talk about it a lot more, because he loves yokai. Every time I bring up Pokemon, he talks about yokai. So if there was anyone who was close to being a rival, it would have probably been Yokai Watch. But
if
boiled down to it, they didn't really...
If a game company takes this guy right here, and turns it into something that is still digestible for the turn-based RPGer player, excuse me, and evolves it, Pokemon will be in trouble. Pokemon will actually be in trouble, but I don't think until this happens, I really don't.
Well, it wouldn't even be that Pokemon would be in trouble. It would just be Pokemon might actually, the Pokemon company might actually consider
a
like
worth fighting against to make us things that we like better. Yeah.
A little bit Balthros. I could see that. Like, I as someone who lives in a place where there is quite a bit of Japanese culture, yeah. I recognize, like, aren't these like actual?
They're yokai.
Yeah, I was like, oh, they're. I get, and I was like, oh, that's why it's called that. It's like they're literally like the umbrella demon, and it's like, oh, they're yokai. I get it. Like when I first saw some of them, I was like, oh, it's like a Pokemon thing, and then I saw, I was like, oh, they're literally like like kappas and I forget the name of the one-eyed umbrella with the sandal and the tongue, and
yeah, I agree with you, Brie. That is one of the big ones. I think that there's always a little bit of concern with like bringing a new idea to your players, but it's just one of those things where they aren't in any position to take a risk, and so they won't, right?
They don't have a need
to. They don't have a need to. They don't have a desire to. They're not in a position where they have to take a risk. So until that changes, they're not going to, right? They're not.
No, Knight, we didn't really cover that as much. But I mean, that's the thing. Technically, they don't have. They could take more time, because that's actually a good point if we were to touch on that real quick. Mm-hmm. Because they have toys, anime, card game,
multimedia market.
It's a multimedia market. Yeah. They could take a little bit of time and not release another game. And
that's something that everyone always makes fun of Square Enix for. But the fact of the matter is, if we have to wait to get a good game, most gamers will.
Well, that's the thing with Final Fantasy. They keep themselves afloat with Final Fantasy 14.
They have,
and 11 for that matter. The subscription base.
So long to make, but at
it's
the
good.
end,
it was great.
It was worth it.
It looked beautiful. It was fun. Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3.
I remember when Baldur's Gate 3, which obviously Larian finished Divinity 2, which was their last title, long time ago before they started working on Baldur's Gate, right? Gamers will wait, yes. But like, seriously, I think it's very silly that Pokemon feels the need to put a game out every year, because like, seriously, they have so much other multimedia marketing. It's not like anyone's gonna forget about Pokemon. Well, and we wait for a title, like, seriously.
Well, they could also go the other route where like they try to advertise new things that they want to do with card games. But I feel like the thing with Pokken, or at least I can speak for myself on this one. The part I didn't like about Pokken was the abysmal choice of Pokemon. Like, you've got, at this point now, but when Pokken came out, there was over 900 Pokemon, and you could pick 18. Mm-hmm. That wasn't even close to the roster of Smash Brothers at the time when Pokken came out. So it's
exactly.
This is sad. But, and some of them were duplicates. Shadow Mewtwo and Mewtwo. It's like, so realistically, I've got even less choices. Mm-hmm. Now, I enjoyed the gameplay to a degree, which is kind of why I wanted to incorporate that into this to some degree, and take out the part that I felt like scared people off of Pokken, which was the fact that it was a fighting game with all the, I gotta do the button mash and remember the combo. Right. Like, you tell your Pokemon to do this attack, it'll just do a combo. Mm-hmm. You know? maybe you train it and we make a mechanic where it can learn to do combos. There's a lot of
there are so many RPGs over the last 20 years, I'm not even exaggerating that number, that have taken the turn-based mechanic and evolved it into something that is better without it not being turn-based, or with it requiring some kind of like skill-based action button pushing. Like, there's so many RPGs that have done it, whether it's like Wild Arms, where they walk around and they hit stuff and then you give it a command and they do a special attack, or like Final Fantasy IV or Final Fantasy VI. There's so many examples. It's not even worth like going on down a list, because it's just like the fact that they haven't done it yet is why they're falling behind. But they're like, we don't need to, because, you know, we're Pokemon. And it's very sad. Very sad.
But I feel like that's the presentation that I'd basically give. At that point, if I was actually in the work session, it would probably be then we'd set up, either if we were out of time at the meeting, we'd probably set up another meeting.
Yeah, that's a good point. So if we were to, just as an exercise in the game development process, this is where we would then write out a GDD, a game design document, which would outline these things in much greater depth, like a Bible about the game.
Yeah, basically.
And that's where we would go from there.
It would include segments of, in this case, for this game, if it was Pokemon, how moves are translated and what their presented ideas are. Then it'd be finding and making notes of similarities, and then finding ways to pick out the importance of, like, okay, all of these maneuvers would have this similarity, so then we need to have this generic mechanic behind it that then could be used to improve efficiency, where all of these moves are a way to summon it, and then we probably do a balancing thing of make sure every type of Pokemon can have at least one variation of it, so that a trainer could have a Pokemon that does all the things they need it to do, or gameplays that they might want to have. And then you go a little farther and you start adding, like, okay, what are the specialties of these or those or whatever else is going on.
Exactly, all of that.
But that's like really, that would also be after what I was going into, where if this was a real thing, where you'd have another meeting where someone else on the team would also present a potential design, or possibly we'd have a discussion if everyone liked this design, as like investors, I should say, or the higher up management of the people who do have the money, and or decide what to do with the millions of dollars. Millions and billions of dollars, and they have to put their name on the approval, would then, if they're happy and they feel like the sales and the customers are happy with what this might be, or they think it's a good chance, then we'd move into the next phase of other things, or refining it deeper, going in more details and things like that.
Oh, okay.
But
and I think that
we're in an ad.
It's okay. I think that this was a lot of fun. I had a fun drawing everything and stuff like that. But I don't know. If some person sees this video over on YouTube and like gets the gumption to make a fan game, and they're like, I'm gonna make it and I'm gonna do all this stuff and it's gonna be great and I'm gonna use all those ideas and make their game, you know what? Go for it. You know.
If I make something, I'll be using this for a different design in a completely different setting. Yeah. Unless Pokemon sees this and they approach us and gives me the license.
If Nintendo sees this video and they want us to make their Pokemon game, then okay, that sounds great. If somebody... Special thanks, Game Grotto. Yeah, exactly. But like, you have a hot take. Clarabart, you have a hot take. Okay.
Okay, everyone's back now.
You can share your hot take, Clarabart. We're happy to hear it. But yeah, it's just one of those things where we understand that a lot goes into making a game, so... Oh my gosh, that would be insane.
You know, I've seen some people talk about that.
It's hard to add difficulty to an RPG because the main thing you do to make something more difficult is you just give them more HP, and that doesn't actually add more difficulty. Force players to actually interact with harder parts of your game.
The fact that most people don't even know that when someone says EV, they're not talking about the Pokemon, they're talking about effort values.
Yeah.
Or IVs, or any of that existing, because it's not needed to play the game.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
It's hard to make an RPG more difficult without like making it a grind.
That is the unique thing about Pokemon compared to most other turn-based RPGs. If they would lean into it, to pay them a little compliment of what they accidentally kind of stumbled into.
What does Brock say?
What?
We fight hard and we love hard. We play hard because we all love Pokemon. Because that's why we want to have these discussions. Because we do love Pokemon a lot, and we'd like to see it get better. So it's just one of those things where reblogging Pokemon Take Notes because Palworld was a thing that people talked about, that's not helping. But actually thinking critically and trying to make something good, that might help a little bit.
Well, the point I was going to add is that Pokemon could do that with what Clarbart just said about you can give movesets that are like strategies that are more difficult.
Exactly. There is that aspect of it, which is why we talked about it in our AARPG concept.
Yeah, the idea of the AARPG concept is that because it's autonomous actions.
Yes, that is exactly what Brock said, Knight. Thank you very much.
That was the reason I came up with this concept, because then it would allow for more strategy moves that...
I'll zoom in because Clarbart said that they came late just so that they can see the kind of the concept of the AARPG. Probably there's the best way that
I appreciate the hot take, Clarbart. The only thing I would add is that that kind of change is like what the fan games do already, and it's not really changing Pokemon to improve. It's just kind of allowing Pokemon to be played the way that competitive does, and that doesn't really change Pokemon.
Yeah, Balthus, I think that's the idea. When Don and I design games, one of the things we really like to keep in mind is what I call the little brother, their little sibling, right? If you hand the game controller to your little sibling, are you going to be like dragging them along, or is there a level at which that sibling can play the game and still be participating even if they're not helping? As a younger sibling myself, I kind of know, and I also have a younger sibling. I'm a middle child. So like that whole entire concept, and that's why like we talked about it in this concept, was because you could just have the little sibling, that
just watch.
They just throw out their Pokemon. They hit A,
and they hit the cheer button,
and their Pokemon would autonomously take care of the fight themselves. And like we've talked, unless Pokemon has a rival to push them to change their game, it's very likely they won't.
Well, a better way to say it is a rival would do them wonders.
Yes, a rival would do. That's a great way.
A rival would help the consumers feel like there's a need to advance. There's a need to invest, because at the end of the day, it really comes down to do they need to invest the time and money into coming up with something? Because like these meetings that I just was basically mocking that I have to do for my work in the division I'm currently in with like R&D, where we have these kinds of discussions. One of the designs that I had done and presented and we approved then got put in with someone else's bigger design that then evolved into another design that then is the next sequel version of what we're working on now. So now we're thinking, okay, we did the part that you designed, and then I took that design and then put it into these designs, and now we're taking this, and then the next evolution of it is over here, and we're planning on doing that. All of that takes investment and time and people's efforts and stuff like that. And that's what it is, time and money.
Yeah.
And so unless there's a real need, from that standpoint, I don't blame Pokemon Company for not doing anything, because if it's working, they don't really need to change anything.
From a purely money standpoint,
well, it's ask the question. It's the do we need to invest the time and money into trying to come up with something, and without a rival or some other competitor that pushes them, like the company I'm in is pretty all of them are pretty competitive.
I think
but
that as people who do work in video games, right? Like we make games. I think it's sad, like that they don't feel any kind of like desire past making the next game, and like they don't want to change anything. Like if there's one thing that I can credit Yoshida-san from Final Fantasy 14, who works on the expansions and things like that, there's certain levels that he keeps the game the same, but there's other things that he's just like, okay, this is my thing I want to do because I want to do it because I want to make something cool, right?
Or he hears people on all the forums and stuff.
Or they listen, they listen to the fans and they say, "Oh, you want to have it so that is unlocked and everybody can wear that? Okay, we're gonna figure out how to make that work, whether or not that."
Or apologize and say we can't make it work. We tried,
like
or
when Endwalker came out, right? The fact that the people behind Pokemon, whether it's Pokemon Company or Nintendo or whoever is the one holding the stick saying "do the thing," I really don't know who it is, but the fact of the matter is that they have lost that passion.
Well, they don't have to have it.
They don't have to have it, but they also don't have it.
I don't know if they've lost it because it's just they don't need to do anything. They're still making them. They're still making the little cartoons. They're still making the shows.
If there is somebody on the dev team that is pushing for them to try new things, to make better games, I'm sorry that they're not listening to you, little probably Japanese person that is trying their best to make things new. I apologize for not recognizing your hard work, but it does feel that way, and it is an unfortunate feeling.
I guess just because the last thing that Bree was mentioning, essentially the final thing about Palworld is
the little guy. Oh, that was great. You guys heard that, right? I didn't hear that in my headphones.
Oh, maybe not. I don't know.
Did you guys hear the "hey little guy"? Hold on, I'm
if not.
Old banana. Oh, you guys are hearing it, I'm just not. Which means my headphones are just turned down. No? Okay, well, it doesn't matter. As long as you guys can hear it, that's what matters. Well, there's always lag.
Was that the bite of 87?
If they wanted to do what people were trying to say they were doing, or what they were essentially, to me, I took it as a lie, so that's why I don't like what they did. Because they were trying to say it was something like Pokemon with guns. It really wasn't. It had guns and it had pals that don't behave like Pokemon.
They just look like Pokemon.
I'm not a big fan of builder games myself. Like, they're fun occasionally and it's fun to play with friends. But I would say the biggest thing that they were missing was the AI of the creatures. They're so aimless and they all act the same way. And I think the biggest miss was the idea that they don't die.
Yeah.
Because it's like, is it survival or is it a sport? Is it for fun?
It has such an identity crisis that if it hadn't been memed on so hard, as it stands as an actual game, the foundation of the design is very poor.
Not there.
It's just very poor.
Well, they basically just took Craft World and added a Pokemon mod, or a PAL mod.
Exactly.
And so, that's like that's the biggest problem with it. And then of course they had the audacity to charge $30. That's just like, no. Why?
Oh yeah, Don is this leads to a funny story, Bree, and this will be my last story because I have the big secret to share with you guys. You remember?
Okay,
you don't.
Just keep going.
That's fine. So when Don was a wee little robot, you were complaining about a game, I believe the story goes. And your dad said, well, why don't you tell them? And there's a number on the back of a Pokemon cartridge or something like that.
On the back of the Game Boys.
On the back of the Game
Boy
Boys,
Pocket.
there's a number you can call that is a support number, and you'll actually get a representative. It's probably a Nintendo of America representative, is my guess. Yeah, Belfrost, there's among the other things, like forcing them to work and stuff like that, but...
I mean, when I say kill them, I mean, like, in the fight, if they die, you can't just revive them. They're just gone. But anyway.
But to finish my story, Little Don called the number on the back of that Game Boy, and basically, they told him that you should go to DigiPen, which is funny, because that's what they say on their website now, and it makes me frustrated. But the game that you were telling the Nintendo guy about was a Pokemon game, wasn't it?
It was.
It was a Pokemon game. So I feel like we've all been there where we could be like, what if we did this and what if we did that? And
it was supposed to be make more of
the idea of making like what would a Pokemon style MMO be like?
Oh yeah.
And like you've talked about that game design literally the entire time I've known you.
Just about.
Like you've wanted a Pokemon style MMO your entire life.
Ever since MMOs were a thing I knew about.
So it's definitely one of those things where we see our cute little creatures and we just want to do all the things with them. And I am also there. I also want to do all the things with my cute little creatures. But that was
the secret.
Okay, I'll just get to the secret.
No, I don't know. I don't know what it is now. Oh, I didn't know that was a secret. Well, that's why I didn't know.
Dawn's concept. Well, Dawn, now you have to share because now they're curious.
Oh.
The gumbo is called "Go Play Bots of the Roman Reds Tap Off."
No, it was.
You've got better gumbo.
The call that I called them about when I was like 7 or 8 was like Mario Party with Pokemon with more mini games, based off the like Burger King toys and stuff like that.
I mean, obviously a very childish thing, but still.
I drew like a few pictures and like had a few ideas and thought it would be cool on the Nintendo 64.
Is it a fan game? I'm not aware of it, Think Tank, but
I know somebody's tried to do it, but it wasn't what I was planning or thinking.
Imagining.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, exactly. Like it was.
Literally, it was. I wanted to make more Pokemon Stadium mini games.
And so he called the Nintendo guy.
Make more Pokemon Stadium mini games. Here's some ideas, and I just named them. I just explained them. Much like,
you know, what's adorable is he listened to you, right?
Well, he didn't just hang up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Uses a ROM as a base, adds online, and then makes it an MMO. So it's not really an MMO. It's just a ROM. Like it's a hack of the original Pokemon game.
What I had been toying with for a long time for an MMO Pokemon was very different than what Pokemon is today.
Yeah. It's basically like an MMO, but it's got Pokemon in it, not Pokemon, but it's got MMO in it. If that makes any sense to you guys. But on the topic of creating things, big and small, the little game developer in all of us, I wanted to announce that Game Grotto will be hosting our very first...
What's with the breath?
Game Jam! Yeah!
She almost passed out. It's like, you okay? What's going on?
But yes, we're going to be hosting our very first Game Jam, you guys. You guys can see all my links. But, so we're going to be hosting a Game Jam, and I'm gonna put this in the chat for you guys, like, literally right now. And I will pin it.
I don't even know what that means to host one.
This is using itch.io.
Okay.
Because they have the ability to basically all that hosting means, Dawn, is that we just made the jam live with our account. There's not much more to it than that. But hi Onyx. Did you hear me hold my breath and you got nervous? But basically, here I'll zoom in a little bit because this is like really hard to see.
Just zoom in on the webpage.
Oh yeah, I guess I can just zoom in on the webpage. I'm done. Okay, there we go. Oh, thank you for the cookie redeem. Thank you, Silver Dragon. Best. Well, I guess you did you just hit the mic or was that your?
Yeah,
game?
I hit the mic.
Sorry, everyone.
I hit the table or whatever.
Okay, so you have to have an itch.io account to opt in to participate. But basically, what we're planning on doing is on March 28th at midnight, so Thursday at midnight, Friday
morning at midnight.
We exactly, Think Tank, exactly. We're going to be doing a weekend jam for April Fools. PST. Yeah. Yes, PST. Yeah, it just says the time, but I'm pretty sure it's PST.
Whichever. It's mainly supposed to take place from Friday to Sunday. Before April Fools.
Before April 1st. So this game jam is called Just for Laughs. We are going to be making funny games, parodies, or just like a really funny concept, you have the weekend to do it. And then on April 1st, we get to see all the games. And if we have, you know, a good chunk of them, we could maybe play them on stream. But if we don't have enough participants, it's just like, we'll just show you our game. And we are going to be jamming as well. We're going to be making a game.
Well, no,
we're not going to talk about it right now, but I think I'm going to be getting the voices beforehand. Right. So for the game we will be jamming. The only thing we're going to do before the jam is we're going to be collecting an assortment of voices. So if you did voice acting for Mansion at Midnight, or if you missed out on Mansion at Midnight and you want to do some voice acting for our comedy game,
infinite amount, so everyone,
literally,
no one will be turned away.
We need so many. Like, if we had 1,000, it would still be enough for what we need. Oh, Chibi, hi, yes. Is the page itself adjusts to the viewer's time zone? Oh, excellent. I didn't know that, but thank you for mentioning that. Yes, literally, I will give you guys more details about what exactly we will need for the voices, but I know, more voice acting! It's going to be very similar to what we did for Mansion at Midnight, where it's going to be just like
a single line. But it's more of an improv.
Yeah, it's going to be improv.
Well, it's an improv prompt, so it's like, here's the prompt, what would you say?
Yes.
And then that's your line. And if you want to do a few takes, we could pick one or which one you like. But we're basically trying to get at least multiple people's single line, so
for the actual game, you will start making it on the weekend.
But technically, there's nothing stopping you from preparing things.
There's nothing stopping you from preparing things. I think that
technically, if we're collecting voice things, it's like
the reason you guys are
originally this wasn't going to be a game jam we announced for people.
But the whole point of us doing it over the weekend is we're going to be streaming it. We're going to be streaming our process of making the game with you guys.
So if you want to hang out.
That's why we're jamming it.
Yeah.
So, like, we're going to be doing some stuff beforehand with the voice acting, but for the bulk of the like
actually putting the project together,
we're going to be jamming for that weekend, right? With the exception of Sunday. We're going to do Sunday off stream.
Yeah.
But
that way
Friday,
we can catch up if we need to.
we're going to be streaming the process of making the game that we're concepting. But before the jam, you guys are welcome to do all the concepting you would like, all the brainstorming, all the sketches, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's totally up to you.
That would be the idea. I mean, like, we're not that strict about it. Like,
yeah, it's very much for fun. This is not a judge.
There's no competition to it. So
like
if you want to take longer,
I
mean,
like,
we'll be jamming it. Really, it's for us. We were like, oh, let's just do it in a weekend because we have to plan it so far ahead. But if you need to work at a slower pace,
Well, I thought it would be fun for you guys to join us. And also, if we get, like, a bunch of games and we can just play them.
Or if you want to, like, if you're starting to work on it now because you want to learn some things or use some techniques, and then when it comes to it, you just want to hang out and just be like, I'm doing it. So you have something to turn in. That's fine. It's like you said, there's no, like, big prize. There's no, like, big thing to it, so.
Is it cool? Is this something we can participate in if it's a pre-made engine like Unity?
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's no restrictions on Game Engine. We'll be using Unity for ours, but if you want to try Godot or Unreal or Game Maker or Ren'Py Studio, literally anything is up for grabs. And
we're just having fun.
Exactly.
It's to make funny jokes.
We're gonna make some really funny games and play them on April Fool's Day and just have a ball and just have some laughs. And that's why it's called the Just for Laughs Game Jam, because then we can just have fun with it. But I will be making a page on the Discord for this. I can also link some resources for you guys, especially those of you who are like, I want to give it a try, but I don't know where to start. I can add some links to, like, Game Maker Studio and RPG Toolkit and Ren'Py Studio for you guys. I have all the intention to do all the things. So
yes, if you just want to write a story and you just want to do a visual novel, Ren'Py makes it real easy as far as I know. And there's even like some point and click things I think we just found out about.
Right.
There was that AG
that one out.
AG something. I'll look at that.
Yeah.
There was
we were watching a video and we learned that there's a point and click base engine. We're like, what? That's crazy. I didn't know that.
But yeah, like I said, we're supposed to be for fun, so like the game jam we went to, the rules of it were pretty open because it was like the global game jam we did that one time. It was
we've participated in the global game jam.
That one in particular, they were like, you can use whatever you want, Excel, Unity, you can use resources you've already made, you could buy some assets as long as you're like.
As long as you have the rights to use it. You don't want to be grabbing pictures off Google. Unless it's like public domain or like a meme or something, you know. You don't steal people's art so they'd be upset.
The way that they kept it so that you couldn't really get started was that the theme was a single word that you had, that you didn't get told until that time at like midnight. Everyone was told the world.
Why gets the theme. That's what they always say.
And so in that case it was everyone got the prompt at the same time and could start designing what they were going to make based off the prompt. So
no, you could make it in Excel. Literally, people have made games in PowerPoint.
Yeah.
The sky is the limit. Also, it's parody night. You could do something so silly where you make a game where you're literally doing what I was doing with the Pokemon, and the only thing that you have to do for it to be considered a game that like can participate is that it has to be playable with instructions on how to play it, so that the person playing it knows that how to play it, basically. That's the only restriction. So if you literally have your game submitted be a link to a Google Docs PowerPoint and it says how to play and you just have to like click pictures, that's a game. That counts. That's why we went with like a silly thing. So you guys don't have to worry about like doing something really complicated, but you could use this as an opportunity to really test your skills and try to learn something new. It's very much a free-form opportunity for you to flex your muscles or push yourself, whatever you feel comfortable doing. And whatever you want to ask questions about, because you know, me and Dog, this is what we do. So if
you could make you could definitely make a choose your own adventure in PowerPoint.
Yes, you can. You
could.
Brie,
that would be, that would count.
That would totally count.
You could even, you could use Renpai. Yeah.
You guys had the same question. That's great. the brains are turning. That's why I wanted to get you guys thinking all the way through, well, the rest of February and March, because it'll be at the end of March.
Yeah.
We've got some more exciting things. I have another thing planned.
And if you don't want to participate, hopefully you'll enjoy the funny game that we're going to put out.
Yes. Or send me your voices if you don't want to make a whole game. You just want to be in our game, because we have a fun game planned, and we think it's gonna be fun. So we figured we get everybody in there, and you guys.
Technically, Ubu started the idea.
Yes, we will.
We were having a discussion. We were having a discussion with Ubu after one of the streams, and he was like, "I don't know why this kind of thing doesn't exist." And then the random comment he made just kept turning the gears in my head, and the next week I'm like, well, I guess we're making it. So here we go. So we all find out what that is.
You guys don't have a prompt. It's not like the global game jam. The only thing you have is that the game should not be very complicated and should be designed to bring a laugh. That is, it is all about being big game for part 2. The VA prompt.
Yeah.
Yes, I will get to you guys. I probably will take tonight off, and tomorrow morning I will work on getting you guys those assets. But I am going to start the Discord page today so that everybody who missed the stream can see.
We could probably, in the channel for the thing we were working on, you could probably post what the prompt would be, or do we want to like
the vocal prompt?
Yeah, do we want the vocal prompt for our game? We
will see. I need to give
we'll figure that out.
Of thought, but I will get you guys that info as soon.
I guess either we'll make it where it's like reach out to us if you'd like to be involved, and
I'll ping everybody because I want everybody to know, and then we can all just go to our Blue Sky and Twitter, just everybody. We can get all the things. It'll be lots of fun, and we can make a little silly game for April. It'll just be a fun thing.
Yeah, just want to do something fun. We're trying to think of a fun thing to do for.
But
that's funny.
That being said, let me just go ahead and do this real quick. Go back to our little thing. So I have my screen. I think that's where we're gonna call it for tonight.
Yeah.
Wrap it up.
Hopefully everyone enjoyed
it. Yeah. Like our little discussion. I know it was a little bit of a different thing. We don't usually do this kind of stuff, but Layla, you came just in time for us to raid. We're just ending. I'm so
welcome
sorry,
in, though.
Layla. Welcome, Layla. Hello, guys. Hello, raiders. I'll do a little shout out for Layla, even though we're wrapping up right now. But
Welcome and goodbye. Well, you don't have to leave. We're just gonna go somewhere else.
Say goodbye, and I say hello.
You say hello. I say goodbye.
I hope you had fun. I believe you were playing Persona, weren't you, Layla? I think that's what you were playing. You guys know the drill.
Yep, Shane.
Make sure you give Layla some love if you don't already. We are here, and it was cool. Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, Fortnite. Okay.
Oh, Fortnite. Oh, well, I hope you got to play the Ninja Turtles because they look amazing, and I have never wanted to play Fortnite before, but after I saw those models, man, I was thinking.
I'm good.
Don's like, no. No.
I already spent my time in the third person versus games.
If you guys redeemed that I had to play Fortnite, I wouldn't be sad, I guess is the point I'm making. But if you do redeem it, Dawn will not play, so don't even
No,
try.
I can.
You would play?
I'll play. I just probably won't be fun.
Serenity's like, I'm getting ideas. All right. Well, Layla, thank you very much for the raid. Unfortunately, we are wrapping up for tonight, so we're gonna find someone cozy to raid. That's true, Miko. Although I have really been enjoying Coliseum. Thank you for redeeming that one. Tomorrow, you guys, we're gonna be playing some more Tales of Symphonia. And we're going to be having fun, late night gaming. And then Saturday, I'm going to be playing 7 Days to Die with Katie and Corky and Cranberry. So if you want to watch us be silly and slay zombies. Also, we got a mod, or I did. I got a mod so that our 3D models are actually inside 7 Days to Die. So like when we're walking around, you'll actually see our characters. It's going to be really fun. I am very excited about it. But we are going to wrap up for tonight. So we will see you guys tomorrow. And Saturday, and Monday, and all the way through all the days.
I don't know if it'll be on the same save for your 7 days.
Yes, it is the same save.
Oh, okay. Well,
so we're going to continue from where we were.
Just characters updated.
Yeah. I just added the mod, so we go. But yes. Thank you guys for listening. I hope that you feel inspired. I hope that the game dev talk maybe got your juices flowing for making your own silly game, and well, just thanks for listening to me and Dawn talk about this stuff, because it's very important to us, and so we try to do our best to spread the knowledge that we know and the things we care about.
Or just enjoyed the thought exercise.
Yeah, and it was a good exercise. I think it's good to flex your brain sometimes. And
or even just you can continue thinking about it yourself. I mean, you saw how we went through one thought process of it. Maybe come up with your own thought processes or your own ideas, and that's the whole point. So there's a thought exercise. I just thought it was an interesting one that would be fun to share, and took us so long to actually have the conversation. I had more of it thought out than I originally would have thought. So here we are.
Yes, we will see you guys tomorrow. Bye, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.